Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de la Trinité.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Madame le connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Bouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le député Labbé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Luce. Madame le député Dublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Morel.
Présent.
Madame le député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ayer.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Alves.
Présent.
Madame le député Gardner. Monsieur le député Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le député Moore. Monsieur le député Mézet.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Balash.
Présent.
Monsieur le député Coles.
Présent.
Madame le député Poré.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le député Miles.
Présente.
Madame le député Scott.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Renaud.
Présent.
Madame le député Curtis. Madame le député Feltham.
Présente.
Madame le député Binet.
Présente.
Madame le député Jeune. Madame le député Miller.
Présente.
Madame le député Howell.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Benet. Monsieur le député Ferry.
Présent.
Madame le député Kovac. Monsieur le député Curtis. Madame le député Ward.
Présente.
Madame le député Wilson. Madame le député Stevenson.
Présente.
Monsieur le député Andrews.
Présent.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi les gouvernements et les puissances de la terre pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir les cœurs et les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de la conduire éternellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit, que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien et au surgissement du peuple qu'il t'a plu de commettre à leurs soins. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite dans la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal, car à toi est la règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le député Moore.
Defo.
Madame le député Jeune.
Deputy Jeune is detained in traffic and will be with us shortly, as soon as she can.
Defo. Yes.
Madame le député Kovac.
Defo. Les états sont constitués. Moving to the consolidated order paper, there are a number of enactments under B, number of documents presented or laid under C, and the following matters have been lodged under D. P70, proposed budget government plan, Fourth Amendment, grants to states funds, lodged on the 17th of November by Deputy Balash. P70, proposed budget government plan, Fifth Amendment, upper earnings limit, lodged on the 19th of November by Deputy Coles. P70, proposed budget government plan, Sixth Amendment, stamp duty holiday for right-sizing homes, lodged on the 19th of November by Deputy Coles. P70, proposed budget government plan, Seventh Amendment, emergency department fees, lodged on the 20th of November by Deputy Porre. P70, proposed budget government plan, Eighth Amendment, sports addition to Jersey Premium, lodged on the 21st of November by Deputy Stevenson. P70, proposed budget government plan, Ninth Amendment, climate emergency, lodged on the 21st of November by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 10th Amendment, preventative health, lodged on the 21st of November by the Health and Social Security Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 11th Amendment, overpayments of social security contributions, lodged on the 21st of November by the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 12th Amendment, Women's Health Strategy, lodged on the 21st of November by the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 13th Amendment, Fort Regent funding, lodged on the 21st of November by Deputy Balash. P70, proposed budget government plan, 14th Amendment, mortgage income tax relief, lodged on the 21st of November by Deputy War. P70, proposed budget government plan, 15th Amendment, removal of 3% stamp surcharge, lodged on the 21st of November by Deputy War. P70, proposed budget government plan, 16th Amendment, emergency department fee charges, lodged on the 21st of November by the Health and Social Security Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 17th Amendment, Office of Children's Commissioner for Jersey, savings allocations, lodged on the 21st of November by the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 18th Amendment, Statistics Jersey, administrative support funding, lodged on the 21st of November by the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 19th Amendment, extend free school meals, lodged on the 21st of November by Deputy Dublé. P70, proposed budget government plan, 20th Amendment, teaching Gérier, lodged on the 24th of November by the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed budget government plan, 21st Amendment, delivering the £500,000 commitment for neighbourhood regeneration in St Helier, lodged on the 24th of November by Deputy Gardner. P70, proposed budget government plan, 22nd Amendment, Victoria Marine Lake, repair and maintenance, lodged on the 24th of November by Deputy Gardner. P70, proposed budget government plan, 23rd Amendment, increased police funding, lodged on the 24th of November by the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. P70, proposed government plan, 24th Amendment, violence against women and girls, legislation and reporting, lodged on the 24th of November by the Connétable of St Martin. P70, proposed budget government plan, 25th Amendment, funding for maintenance of parish churches, lodged on the 24th of November by the Connétable of St Martin. P70, budget plan, proposed budget government plan, 26th amendment, inflation adjustments to apprenticeship grants, lodged on the 24th of November by Deputy Gardner. P70, proposed budget government plan, 27th amendment, childcare funding rate, lodged on the 24th of November by Deputy Gardner. P94, management and maintenance of the half-day park site, amendment lodged on the 18th of November by the Minister for Infrastructure. P94, management and maintenance of the half-day park site, amendment, the amendment lodged on the 20th of November by Deputy War. P101, breaches of the Code of Conduct, review of standing orders, amendment lodged on the 18th of November by Deputy Scott. P105, draft children and civil status, parental responsibility, Jersey Amendment regulations, lodged on the 21st of November by the Minister for Children and Families. And P106, draft companies, Jersey Amendment, lodged on the 21st of November by the Minister for External Relations. There's nothing under E, F, G or H. A number of written questions have been asked to which answers have been responded. And we now come on to oral questions on notice. And the first question, yes, Deputy Howell?
Please may I
Sorry?
raise the defo on Deputy Jearn?
Yes, DEF is raised. Yes. Deputy Miller.
Sir, I would like to ask that my statement, which is scheduled to be read after questions without notice, be taken as the first item of business. I've emailed States members about this yesterday. I think there are some questions about it already. I think it would reduce duplication, repetition and possible confusion if I was able to do that statement before we get on to questions. Clearly, if having heard the statement, members still have questions, they will of course be able to continue with them. But I think it would be helpful if that statement could become first, if members are agreeable.
So the proposition is that the Minister for Treasury and Resources will make her statement regarding Blue Islands as the first item of business. Is that proposition seconded? Does anyone wish to speak on that proposition? Members content in proceeding in that fashion? Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank members for agreeing for this to come first. Sir, I'm sure all members will join me in expressing regret that Blue Islands, which had served the Channel Islands for 26 years, entered liquidation on Monday, 17th November, following a decision by their Board of Directors to cease operations. I'm acutely aware of the impact this will have had on the employees of the business, their families, and all others who have been affected. Despite this difficult news, I am grateful to Loganair for the work done to improve contingency proposals and for answering the island's call to make an accelerated entry into the Jersey market, which saw services being stood up in just 36 hours from notice being given to them. I would also like to thank the officials from government and the ports of Jersey who have worked for several months and intensively in recent weeks to ensure a sustainable future for the island's regional connectivity. The government response has been decisive, reassuring for the public and supportive of those employees affected by the outcome. Members and the public will appreciate that our priority in the past week has been to support Blue Island staff and to ensure that our air links were secure. The purpose of today's statement is to provide more detailed information about the circumstances surrounding Blue Island's decision to cease trading and the work undertaken by the government to safeguard our regional air links. Our aim was to support Blue Islands where possible, to ensure regional air links and medical flights were maintained, and to minimise disruption to the public. In doing so, we have had to make difficult decisions after carefully considering all available options. Government financial support for Blue Islands has been twofold. First, during COVID, to keep essential lifeline air links open, and second, to support them more recently while they sought to find a new shareholder through a sales process or to find an alternative long-term solution for their viability. It is, of course, not the role of government to sustain a private business which may be facing financial difficulties. It is, however, the job of government to ensure that essential air connectivity is maintained, and that has been at the forefront of our minds throughout this time. The social and economic impacts, including on transport for people needing medical treatment on England, have been considered carefully in reaching every decision. As members will be aware, government's involvement with Blue Islands began during the pandemic. In order to ensure the airline could continue trading and to maintain essential regional air services during the pandemic, government provided funding to Blue Islands through a £10 million loan facility, of which £8.5 million was drawn down. This support, provided in the middle of 2020, secured lifeline connectivity during a period of unprecedented disruption and allowed Blue Islands to establish itself as an independent airline operating from Jersey. In the intervening 5 years, Blue Islands has provided lifeline transport for medical patients to Southampton, carried 650,000 passengers, providing important connectivity that has generated revenues for our visitor economy, as well as continued regional connections that have added value to the wider economy and to the public, made interest and capital repayments to government of £3.2 million. The COVID loan met its principal objective, sustaining the island's regional air links at a time when, due to the pandemic, no other airline would have started providing services to the island. In so doing, Blue Islands made a significant contribution to the recovery of the island's visitor economy, and we must thank them for their service to our island during that time. Turning to more recent events, the COVID loan formed part of the ongoing discussions with Blue Islands on their viability and funding needs. From late 2024, we were asked to defer amounts owed to government while Blue Islands explored a sale or an alternative solution. We agreed on the basis that we were supporting them to find a solution and to minimise disruption for the public and severe impacts on the economy. We have worked closely with Ports of Jersey during this time to ensure that vital connectivity is maintained. Following this statement, members will be provided with a detailed timeline of government's work over this period and a full account of funding provided to Blue Islands since the pandemic. Sir, I would hope that that members would, if that has not already been delivered, that members would be happy for me to go through those at the end of this statement, although they do not technically form part of the statement. I'll revert to that at the end. In summary, to allow time for a potential sale to be explored, the government agreed to defer repayments of the pandemic loan and asked Ports of Jersey to provide working capital support by extending credit terms for airport charges. In June of this year, Blue Islands approached government as a key stakeholder regarding options for future ownership, and since then, the government and Ports of Jersey have been assessing and negotiating those options. Further government support for Blue Islands remained a continuing option throughout this process, while Loganair provided the most compelling proposal submitted by any alternative airline. An options analysis undertaken during the summer demonstrated that if ministers chose to provide financial support for a transition to an alternative airline, Loganair represented the lowest cost and best route to securing the island's regional air links. This was due to its scale, operational resilience, opportunities for further future expansion, financial sustainability, and commitments to provide both consumer guarantees and a replacement aircraft within 4 hours of any technical delay. Accordingly, government discounted an alternative proposal from Orine, which also carried a risk that further financial support would be required in the future. To develop the remaining options, further detailed work was required. Accordingly, over the last few months, Loganair undertook due diligence to finance its proposal to government. During this period, it was necessary for the government to provide additional financial support to Blue Islands to ensure that it could continue operating. It was apparent that, without such support, Blue Islands may have ceased trading earlier in the summer, when there were no effective contingency arrangements in place. This would not have been acceptable. Throughout the process, the government has been clear that it was essential to avoid any sustained period where Jersey would be without regional air connectivity upon which islanders and our visitor economy rely. Funding of 1.2 million and then a further 0.5 million were therefore provided to Blue Islands to avert this outcome while a long-term outcome could be confirmed. This was prudent and sensible planning and financial management. Had we not provided support when we did, the disruption to the public in the busy summer and early autumn months would have been far greater than the comparatively small amount of disruption that we have experienced. I must also add that the government is a secured creditor of Blue Islands. As such, we will expect that the majority of the recent funds will be able to be reclaimed, and we will submit a claim to the liquidators in due course. In terms of recent weeks, work to refine options intensified, and by the evening on Wednesday 12th November, it became clear that Loganair could commence replacement services very quickly in the event that Blue Islands could not continue trading. With government support of up to £1.5 million to support the mobilisation of its fleet and services, Loganair committed to accelerate its mobilisation from an original estimate of 30 to 60 days to within 48 hours. Although the remaining alternative options were, on the face of it, credible and offered a potential prospect of recovering some of the government's COVID loan, they required significant upfront taxpayer money and carried considerable financial risk. There was also no guarantee that we would not be asked for further funds in the future, and any form of loan repayment would have taken many years, which reduces its present value. In short, we were not prepared to continue using taxpayer money in this way, given the alternative available to us. Again, this was both prudent and sensible financial management. I need not remind members that finding these additional upfront costs would not have been an inconsequential matter, and would have required the diversion of funds meant for other purposes, in particular government capital schemes. Taking these considerations into account, the Council of Ministers agreed with me that the government should not pursue the potential options that would require government to provide further financial support for Blue Islands. They also agreed that we should activate business continuity arrangements with Loganair to protect air connectivity if the Blue Islands directors concluded that the company had to cease operations. Sir, while the loss of Blue Islands is regrettable and a matter of great sadness to many of us, government acted decisively to protect the island's transport links and the wider long-term interests of islanders. The contingency arrangements put in place have ensured the continuity of services, and teams from Ports of Jersey and government acted swiftly to minimise disruption on the ground for passengers. The feedback that I have heard about the Loganair services has been very positive. The new partnership we have established with them provides a strong foundation for the future of our regional connectivity that should enable us to look ahead with confidence. So that concludes the statement. If members would find it helpful, I am happy to spend a little more time going through the timeline in more detail and the amount of funding that has been provided by government.
Well, I don't think you can, because the standing order is quite strict. You shall give the text of what you propose to say to the greffier and then to members, so you can't supplement it.
Okay,
Perhaps in supplemental answers you might get a chance to deal with some of that material, but the standing order is clear on that. The first question is from Deputy Taddeo.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. First question is, why did government advance a further loan to Blue Islands on the day before its collapse?
Minister.
I'm sorry, sir, I didn't. Could the Deputy repeat his question?
Yes.
Yeah, so the question is, why did government give a further loan to Blue Islands on the day before its collapse?
So we didn't give a further loan to Blue Islands on the day before its collapse.
Supplementary?
Yeah, I'll clarify then. The last loan that was given to Blue Islands of, we believe it's £500,000. So whenever that was given, if not the day before, in very close proximity to the collapse of Blue Islands, why would government have given that loan, probably in the knowledge that Blue Islands was on very shaky ground and likely to collapse at any moment?
Minister.
Sir, the loan that the Deputy is referring to of £500,000, I think was authorised on 7th of November and I believe was made on that day. I think that was a Friday or possibly the next working day. At that stage, we agreed to provide that loan because at that stage, Loganair were not able to start contingency services within a period of shorter than 7 days. And we concluded that a 7-day gap in service was prohibitive. And at that time, we were also, even then, we were still looking at an alternative solution which involved a transitional option with Loganair or additional investment in Blue Islands. At that point, we still thought there were other options on the table, and that is why we agreed the alternative funding to keep Blue Islands flying for a further period.
Constable St Saviour.
Thanks, sir. Whilst I'm sure, sir, that all of the Blue Island aircraft will be on a leasehold basis, would the Minister outline where she thinks that Jersey may have a claim against anything either in Jersey or in the UK that would bring funds in? And will the Minister also be pursuing a claim on behalf of the Jersey Blue Island staff? Thanks, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I think the Deputy is right. The aircraft, sorry, Constable, I apologise. I think the Constable is right. I believe the aircraft are leased. Government does have security over certain of the assets, and we will certainly be making a claim to enforce our security over those assets. Government will not make a claim. We will not, I think, technically make a claim on behalf of the employees, but the employees, to the extent that they are owed unpaid wages, unpaid holiday pay and redundancy, will be able to make a claim through income support for the insolvency benefit. And certainly in my time as Social Security Minister, I was very clear to the team at Social Security that to the extent we pay out on insolvency benefit, we then stand in the shoes of the employees, and I'm sure the ESSH will also be putting a claim into the liquidators, but the management is now in the hands of the liquidators, and I can't really say a great deal more about that. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary? Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. May I first raise defo on Deputy Moore, please?
Members content to raise defo on Deputy Moore? The defo is raised.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. I'm going to quote the CEO of Blue Island. He said, "This is not an outcome we expected." Clearly, he wasn't aware that the funding was removed. What was the Can the Minister explain what was the turnaround plan for Blue Island before it was abandoned?
Minister.
So, as I indicated in my statement, we considered from June, we were considering multiple options. The first one, obviously, which was Blue Island's own strategy, was to find an alternative, to find a purchaser, to find another airline that would come in and take over Blue Islands. As a small airline with some amount of debt, that was always going to be difficult, and purchasers are often, generally unlikely to take over significant liabilities. We also considered a transition to a transitional arrangement where the service would move to Loganair. And we also did consider throughout further funding to Blue Islands remained on the table throughout. But there came a point where we simply could no longer sustain that as an option. I was slightly surprised by that comment from the Blue Islands directors because we were aware much earlier in the perhaps early autumn, late summer, that they had taken insolvency advice and that without further funding they would have ceased trading at an earlier date. So I can only assume that Blue Islands thought we were going to continue giving them money until such time as... I recognise that it may have come as a surprise to them, but the notion that they had not considered a position where they might have to cease trading through insolvency is not something that they had considered. I do that's for that matter for them clearly, but I didn't believe that was the case. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. Just in terms of sustainability of regional airlines, I just noticed on the figures for Aurigny in 2024 made a £6.5 million operating loss last year. We've seen Blue Island suffer financial consequences of all this. Why will Loganair be different? What's sustainable? What's more sustainable about Loganair? Do we have actually a fundamental problem with regional airlines?
Minister.
I think, sir, the issue is scale. It is one of scale. It's also there is also an issue at the moment, as I understand it, with basically global supply chain in terms of things like aircraft parts and engines. And I don't remember the figures, but I have been told at some point that in previous days, if an engine went technical, it could be fixed in a matter of weeks. At the moment, if an aircraft is broken, it can take a matter of months. Now, if you only have 4 or 5 operating aircraft and you lose 2 airlines to 2 aircraft to technical issues, you lose income and cash flow very, very quickly. If your fleet is down to 2, you lose money very quickly. I think that is true. That's certainly true of Blue Island. Eastern Airways, I think, also went into administration more recently in the south coast of England. That may be true of them. Loganair does seem to be a different kettle of fish. It has much bigger scale. It has almost 40 aircraft. It has aircraft of a wide range of shapes and sizes. They serve numerous islands of. They serve numerous jurisdictions from an airport. They go to airports that I think have reasonably big runways and infrastructure, and they also go to islands where you land on the beach, literally. So they have a range of aircraft available to them, and the scale of their operations. They have said very proudly they have no debt. They have managed to operate very successfully. So I certainly have every confidence in their ability to run these routes. The routes themselves, we are satisfied that the routes themselves are profitable if you have aircraft running on them regularly. And when we have the issue of scale that Loganair will offer, we should see a profitable airline continuing to serve Jersey for the long term. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Shifting the attention a little earlier, it's clear that the government ramped up its activities in around June time, by the sound of it, with first financial support. But the Controller General drew attention to the fact that there was not sufficient, in her view, analysis of information coming back from Blue Island in relation to the loan that had been given, and said there is no evidence within government to demonstrate that information about the KPIs has been systematically collated, evaluated and reported on during the period of the loan. Does the Minister regret the fact that government did not pay more attention to the performance of the loan earlier?
Minister.
Sir, if I could correct the Deputy's opening remarks, government clearly did not wrap up its activities in June. June, as far as I personally am concerned, June was only the start. We agreed to defer the COVID loan at the end of last year, and from June we entered into extensive discussions and negotiations regarding the online future of Blue Islands, which included giving them further funding later this year. I'm sorry about those comments from the CNAG, because the loan was very much monitored. It was monitored regularly, as representatives of both Ports of Jersey and Treasury representatives attended all Blue Island board meetings as board observers. This started in 2020 when the COVID loan was made, and they attended all board meetings. So we knew very much what was happening with Blue Islands. And from that perspective, and the CNAG did refer to that in her report. She mentioned that we had representatives at all board meetings. In terms of KPIs, the main purpose of the COVID loan, and I'm trying to find some details which are not leaping out at me. The main purpose of the COVID loan was to keep the airline operating during the pandemic. And anybody here who had relatives who had to fly to Southampton for medical treatment during that period, in fact, any islander who had to fly to Southampton or who had to leave the island for any urgent matter during that period will be, I am sure, grateful of the fact that we made that loan and kept Blue Islands flying. There were other KPIs as I can't find my notes, the KPIs from memory were firstly that they kept flying and that they maintained regional air links. They did that. They maintained links to Southampton and either then or later to Exeter and Bristol and various other airports. So they did do what they were asked to do. They carried, I think, some 650,000 passengers in the time since 2020. They have operated as an airline for this island. I think there are another 2 KPIs, but I'm sorry, I just cannot put my hands on them right at the moment. But we did not ignore the KPIs. They were there. Do we want to sit down every month and tick boxes, or do we just want to get on with things? I think sometimes getting on with things is the best thing. But the main purpose of the loan that was made, and they did pay back, they drew down 8.5 million, they have paid back £3.2 million in capital repayments and interest, and we agreed to defer to keep them afloat. I think we could easily, I would be quite comfortable. I'm sure anybody who was part of this assembly during the pandemic would not have made any other decision than to provide Blue Islands with that funding. Those of you who were there would have made that same decision. It served its purpose, and I think we can consider that loan as any other COVID cost, in the same way that we spent £14 million building the Nightingale Hospital. That's no longer there. We spent...
Your answer's now been almost 3 minutes,
sorry,
Minister. Thank you very much. Supplementary.
Yes, so with respect, the question wasn't about box ticking. It wasn't about whether the loan was the right thing to do at the time, and nor was it actually about whether the loan was monitored. It's about what was done with the information coming back. The CNAG was very, very specific. She said that there was no evidence that the information coming back had been systematically collated, evaluated, and reported on. In other words, the information may have been there, but there wasn't much done with it. And that's the point, sir, because there might have been early warnings if that information had been properly analysed. So I ask the question again, does the Minister regret the fact that more attention was not paid to the performance of the company after that loan had been given that the CNAG has made that judgment?
Minister.
Sir, again, I could only say the loan was made in 2020 and Blue Islands made repayments of capital and interest from the requisite time. They were asked to repay from 2023, and it was at the end of 2024 the Board of Directors came and said we needed to defer because they could no longer repay. They needed help to continue. There are other things in the background. We did monitor. We were aware of what was happening. We also have to bear in mind that Blue Islands, at the time the loan was made, was owned by an individual who was a source of funding for that airline. When he died, Blue Islands has been owned by trustees of a will trust. That has meant that further investment from shareholders has not been available, so government had no option but to step in. We have been aware of Blue Islands. I think it is about box ticking. If you send 2 people to board meetings and they're aware of what's happening, they were paying interest and capital repayment, and it wasn't till the end of 24 that they came to us and said they needed further support. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Members content to extend for another 15 minutes? There are other members who wish to speak, so the time is extended. Deputy Porrie.
Sir, can I just raise the defo on Deputy Kovac, please? Thank you.
Content to raise defo? Defo is raised.
Thank you.
Do you have a question as well? No. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain when and how the arrangements for the £500,000 loan came about? Was this something that government offered, or was this something that Blue Islands requested?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. No, it was not something that government offered. It was something that Blue Islands requested. As I have explained, we spent a considerable amount of time. This will be clear in the timeline when that is circulated, if it hasn't been already. We spent a long time looking at all the options available. We were continuing to work on proposals with Loganair. We were continuing to think about Blue Islands' further support. And Blue Islands, I believe, came to us in early November. They asked for additional funding on the 24th of October. We considered that on the basis of all other options. And on the 7th of November, the small group of ministers that really handled this agreed to provide further funding on the 7th of November. As I've mentioned already, we agreed to provide 1.5 million, which was what Blue Islands had requested. But because we did not want to, we were trying to manage that carefully, we agreed that we would pay that in tranches of £500,000 to be drawn at least 5 working days apart. So we made the first payment, and then by the time it came around to the second payment, it was clear to us that we had better contingency agreements with Loganair, that Loganair could step up, and that we could not continue putting money in that we had very little, we thought we had less of a chance of returning. So we made the decision not to make further payments, and to cease the deferral. The deferral arrangement expired, I think, on the 21st of November, and we concluded that we should stop that deferral stop the deferral of the loan repayments.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. There seems to be some misunderstanding between government and Blue Islands as to what was discussed around the loan agreements. Did government give Blue Islands a clear plan as to how that money should be spent and in what way?
Minister.
Sir, there was a clearly stated loan agreement, of course, but it is not for government. Government is not there to interfere in the conduct of an airline. We are not experts in running an airline. Blue Islands asked for funding. We provided them with that funding, and it was clear that it would not be paid in a single element, it would not be paid in a single amount, but we would pay it in 3 separate amounts. Part of that was to ensure that it wasn't all gobbled up into an overdraft or whatever, and that it was used wisely by the Blue Islands directors, but the way in which that funding was spent was decided by Blue Islands.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. In line with my question at the last sitting, could the Minister please explain why no price protection for passengers has been sought through the agreement with Loganair?
Minister.
Sir, I think asking, if we'd said to Loganair, we would love you to come and operate in the island, but you've got to do it at this price, I'm not sure they may not have come. Airlines, like everything else, airlines are very, very expensive, very specialist operations, and we have to leave them to operate in a way that they think is best. Loganair will provide. I think some of the irony about this is that earlier in the year there was a huge amount of complaint and I think questions in this Assembly about Blue Island's reliability. We will see better reliability from Loganair, I'm quite certain of that because of its scale, and Blue Islands will also, Loganair will also offer consumer guarantees, which Blue Islands did not, in line with the EU-UK 261 standard. That is a huge benefit for consumers going forward, but it is not the job of government, and indeed I think it would constitute either, without asking the question of anybody asking Loganair, trying to fix Loganair's prices, I think we'd probably fall foul of the competition law, and we have an open skies policy, and I don't think we can interfere in pricing or how Loganair operates its airline. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I thank the Minister for her extensive answer, yet my question did not refer to price setting, but price protection. And if the Minister, like many other islanders, recalls, after the COVID grant was given to Blue Islands, their fares increased considerably. And my question is simply to ask, what protection is there to islanders who rely on these lifelines, and also government who are considerable purchasers of these fares for health purposes? So what protection is there to to islanders' private and public purses in terms of seeing the potential for exorbitant fare increases?
Minister.
So I'm not entirely sure what kind of price protection she wants unless we tell Loganair what they can charge, which I do not think will be acceptable to them on a commercial basis. I would expect that Blue Island's prices increased after we made the loan, because all airline prices increased after the loan, because the vast majority of them, if anybody travelled during the pandemic, I did. I was fortunate that I was able to fly a few times during the pandemic period. Prices did go up, and part of that was because airports were half empty and airplanes were half empty. Airlines cannot operate an airline that is half empty and continue to operate. At the end of the day, the public will have a degree of choice. If they cannot afford to pay, then they will have to not travel and go through alternative routes. Loganair will offer a service that they can afford to run. I think it will be more reliable and it offers consumer guarantees, but we cannot fix or require set limits on what they can charge. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. KPIs were part of the contract. And to remind what were KPIs, visitor numbers, route resilience, GVA contribution, loan repayment performance. Now we all understand that it was almost a year, maybe just under a year, that loan repayment performance was problematic. The government responded to Public Accounts Committee a month prior airline liquidation that no action required. Why all this didn't trigger actually corrective action from the government back in June, for example, and might save to the public purse in excess of 2,500,000 loan and 1.5 to the Loganair if it would be acted back in June?
Minister.
Sir, had we not provided, I can only say again, Blue Islands have made 3.2 million in repayments of capital and interest. We have not just sat there and watched it go under. We have taken efforts to maintain an airline and to maintain links. I very much doubt that anybody in this Assembly presented with information I was presented with would have taken a different decision, because the implication of not providing funding was that Blue Islands would have ceased trading in June or July, right before the summer period, with no contingency whatsoever for medical flights, which would have meant passengers needing emergency treatment having to fly to Gatwick and get buses and taxis to get to Southampton or to their hospital. I cannot put a price on people getting to hospital for medical treatment. And Blue Islands have, as I say, I have now found my details about the KPIs. Increasing number of visitors. They have flown more than 600,000 passengers since 2020. They restored regional connectivity to Southampton, Exeter, Bristol and others. A long-term base carrier deal was signed, and they employed 65 to 70 employees at any one time in Jersey, and they have paid millions in landing fees and charges to ports of Jersey between 2020 and 2024. The loan was serviced for over a year, and ports attended board meetings and have done further work with Blue Islands, looking at options to ensure its financial sustainability or other ways to ensure connectivity. That is why we now have Loganair operating in the island, and why they were operating 36 hours after Blue Island's last flight arrived in the island. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you to the Minister. The point of the question was that the transition could be prepared 60 days in advance and avoid 1.5 million. And actually, Loganair, well done on them and well done the government, we didn't have a disruption. It's about the planning. Now, the question is, Logan have received up to 1.5 and they step in 48 hours, which is great. What due diligence has conducted to confirm that Loganair could sustainably maintain long-term operation and not just emergency? And
Minister.
Sir, Loganair have not as yet received the 1.5 million. I believe we are still discussing with them the basis on which that fund is provided. It will help them to lease additional aircraft so that by coming to Jersey they do not interrupt services in other islands and in other airports. They are, as I say, they have almost 40 aircrafts. The Jersey, Southampton, all our routes are profitable. There is no reason why, with a degree of scale, they should not operate. They should not operate on a profitable and long-term basis. They also announced, I think in July of this year, that they intended to open competition on the Jersey-Southampton route. They were planning on coming into Jersey in any event. They intended, I believe, to start that from January because it would have taken them some time to set up operations here. And they were able to accelerate that very much more quickly. They have clearly shown a degree of commitment to Jersey, and I am confident that given the profitability and the likely sustainability of these routes, that they will be a long-term partner for this island.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Sadia.
Was the Minister anticipating that Guernsey would welcome Loganair with open arms and allow them to fly between Jersey and Guernsey and between Guernsey and Southampton? And if not, at what point was that probability of Loganair not getting the so-called golden triangle in those three airports considered as a negative factor for the future viability of Loganair in the Channel Islands?
Minister.
Sir, our discussions with Loganair related to Jersey, particularly the Southampton and South of England routes, but particularly Southampton. Loganair had some quite exciting thoughts about the Jersey-Guernsey route. They use an aircraft called the Twin Otter, which is the one that they also land on the beach, and is used for servicing small islands in the UK. They had a very interesting proposal where they would use 2 Twin Otters and they would run a very regular service between Jersey and Guernsey. That is what people have been asking for, and Loganair were keen to provide that. They will have to discuss with Guernsey, we will have to discuss with Guernsey how that moves forward. But our interest as government was the Jersey-Southampton route. We did not discuss what Loganair were going to do with Guernsey. That's a matter for Loganair to discuss with the Government of Guernsey. We have been in touch with the Government of Guernsey and will be arranging meetings with them to discuss the subject of ongoing inter-island connectivity and how we work together in terms of maintaining regional routes. But Guernsey, I do not believe that Guernsey was necessarily a factor beyond the Jersey-Guernsey route that was a factor to Loganair coming to Jersey. They have come to Jersey because they are interested in the routes from Jersey to the UK, and that was what we discussed with them. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Yes, so I think it was certainly likely to impact on their profitability. We'll wait and see. So I was concerned by the Minister to hear that although one of the arguments for bringing in Loganair was that they would have resilience and that they have many dozens of planes, I think, on within the British Isles, that they're still going to need to lease further planes in order to service the Channel Island or the Jersey route. Is that not an alarm bell for the Minister, given the history we know about leasing, whether it's boats or planes, that they're in this position?
Minister.
No, sir. I don't believe it's an alarm bell. Loganair have, if anybody wants to look at the map of Loganair's existing network, it operates almost 40 flights. It flies all around the UK. It flies to destinations in Norway. I think it may also fly to Iceland. It supports the oil industry, so it will be well placed to support our financial services industry.
Got 10 seconds left, Minister.
I've lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry about that. It's my fault.
You cannot put a new route without stopping another. So yes, it is not an alarm bell that they need to lease an additional aircraft to put on additional routes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. That brings that time for questions to an end. And I'll move back to oral questions on notice. And the first question, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Treasury and Resources. Deputy Renouf.
Will the Minister explain the reasons behind the Government's decision to change the decision that Pillar 2 revenues would not be used to fund recurring expenditure as outlined in the budget 2025 to 2028?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. A very quick change of hats. Sir, as explained in the proposed budget document, the budget was prepared in a challenging economic environment. Forecast growth in income was reduced. Inflation was forecast to remain higher for longer, increasing expenditure pressures. These changes meant that tough decisions were needed. That included removing the transfers to the Stabilisation Fund planned from the base forecast of Pillar 2, which in effect allows us to meet ongoing expenditure without raising taxes or making additional cuts to services without proper planning before doing so. However, part of the base case is still being used to enable the new healthcare facilities through funding financing costs and to invest in competitiveness. If receipts are in excess of the prudent forecast for Pillar 2, we will be maintaining our policy of using those receipts to strengthen our reserves, invest further in competitiveness and invest in our infrastructure. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, in their report, recent report, the FPP said the commitment made in Budget 2025 to use relatively certain of the base case Pillar 2 revenues to replenish the Stabilisation Fund has been abandoned. So the money that was going to go into the Stabilisation Fund is now going to go on general expenditure, even though that money is relatively uncertain still. And in line with that, we are of course taking money from the government grant to the Social Security Fund. Is it fair to say that the government has raided every single pot it possibly can just to keep current expenditure ongoing rather than tackle expenditure itself?
Minister.
No, sir. We would like, of course, to put more money into the Stabilisation Reserve and to a strategic reserve. We are very clear that that is a sensible desire and we would like to do that. We will aim to do that with what we get from Pillar 2. But as I said in my original answer, we have a spending. We do not want to increase taxes, nor do we want to cut services. And if I could just make the point now, sir, about spending, I think we're up to 34 amendments to the budget, and I believe there is not a single one asks us to cut spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Question 2, Deputy Tallier will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Tallier.
I'm caught without my order paper, sir, so could I ask to go next? Is that possible?
What did you say? Sorry,
I'm just caught without my order paper, sir. So I'm just going to borrow Deputy Kovac's laptop.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good to have such an organised colleague, sir. So will the Minister detail what meetings, if any, he attended in June 2025 to discuss matters relating to Blue Islands, and if any meetings took place, will he advise when these took place, who chaired such meetings and the key subjects that were discussed?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, because the Treasury Minister was unavailable, I chaired a meeting with representatives of Blue Islands on the 12th of June to receive an update on the airline sales process and the steps it had taken to mitigate the disruption to its service following the widely reported technical difficulties it had experienced earlier in the year. I also attended an internal meeting chaired by the Treasury Minister to discuss Blue Island's financial position on the 13th of June. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Can the Minister confirm what options were considered at this meeting and, for example, whether options relating to the sale of Blue Islands to, for example, either Loganair or Eni were considered, and what other options were considered, and what the Minister's reaction was to the suggestions that were put forward during that meeting.
Minister.
Sir, assuming the Deputy is referring to the meeting on the 12th of June, going from memory, sir, we met Blue Island's representatives and they discussed their attempts to acquire a sale of the company, and then I believe it was the financial performance and kind of the forward look from their perspective, possibly with some options. I am going off memory, so I don't entirely recall, sir, but I believe that was it. It was discussing Blue Islands and the situation around Blue Islands with Blue Islands. So.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. Was the matter of subsidies for new routes discussed at any of these meetings, given that that indeed was something that the Minister eventually put in place?
Minister.
Sir, no, we haven't. I think it's important again. We have paid, or we have agreed to pay for costs of contingency. We have no discussion on subsidies for new routes. There's no subsidies for new routes, to my knowledge, with this Loganair situation, and there wasn't particularly, except maybe on the Paris Charles de Gaulle, but that wasn't directly via government. There wasn't really any subsidies for new routes on the Blue Islands side either. So.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to get at whether there were discussions around new routes with the airline at the time when they were clearly in financial difficulties. The point being that that an airline that is in financial difficulties, it might be asked, questions might be asked about whether or not new routes are appropriate in that situation. So could I ask the question again, were new routes discussed at all with the airline, and did the government take any view about whether it was wise for the airline to be proposing new routes at a time when it was clearly in such distress?
Minister.
Sir, I don't recall whether new routes were discussed. It would seem an odd thing to discuss in that meeting, because that meeting was very much about Blue Islands, and its position with regard to acquiring a sale and so forth. So I don't recall discussing new routes, though it is possible it was discussed. It wouldn't have been the natural within the subject of that meeting, sir.
Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Of the options discussed, could the Minister explain if there were any that he felt were unacceptable or not put forward, not agreed to by government, and if so, why?
Minister.
If the Deputy could repeat that question, please.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I was just asking whether the Minister, in terms of the discussion around what options were available to government in Blue Islands, whether there were any options that he discounted, and if so, why?
Minister.
It depends where in the time frame the Deputy is referring. If we're talking about June, as that was the premise of the question from Deputy Tudje, I don't think any things were discounted at that stage. This was very much the beginning of the process. So, and as I said, we were discussing with Blue Islands, so we wouldn't have discussed, wouldn't have had a discussion about what does the ministers think in front of Blue Islands. That would have been happened at a different time.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister just explain the process he went through to come to his own conclusions about what the best option would be for government to undertake in relation to Blue Island's fate?
So, from my perspective as Minister for Economic Development, I want to ensure that we have resilient connectivity to the islands, sir. And so from my perspective, that was the main aim that I wanted to ensure. And if that ultimately ended up with Blue Islands not being able to continue, to have as smooth a transition from one operator to another was the other concern. So those are the two main concerns that I had, sir. I was relatively neutral on how that should be provided, who would provide that. But as the Treasury Minister spoke previously, ultimately in the analysis, not necessarily in these meetings in June, but ultimately in the analysis, Loganair, because of its scale, seems to be would appear to be a much more resilient provider. So from that perspective, ultimately, I'm very pleased that we have Logan Air serving these routes. So.
Deputy Kovac.
Thank you, sir. I believe it's important to also acknowledge the swift and effective work by the government and ports in managing this transition, supporting both customers and affected staff promptly during the weekend when this was announced and ongoing. But my question is, what specific safeguards has the Minister and the government discussed, either in these meetings or elsewhere, to ensure that any future airline support schemes do not expose us to a similar level of risk as with the loans to Blue Islands?
Minister.
So I don't know if those discussions have taken place. I'm not aware of them, particularly if they had. I do think we need to come back to, and I think this is something the Treasury Minister may have been trying to express earlier. A previous government during COVID provided support in order to maintain an airline and vital connectivity to the island during an extraordinary pandemic. After that, any additional support that came within the last year, and that was very much about trying to ensure connectivity whilst the airline itself had troubles and ultimately seeking to find a smooth solution out of that. So these are this is support during extraordinary periods of that airline's existence. This is not support during the ordinary run-of-the-mill, so it's very different to providing support to an air link just to support that route. This is very much about maintaining the airline survival to provide connectivity itself. So.
Supplementary?
Yes, please. So given the lessons learned from the Blue Islands experience, how will the government ensure stronger financial oversight and earlier intervention if similar risks begin to emerge with any future airline partners?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I mean, government will always seek to maintain good financial oversight, but ultimately that financial oversight is undertaken by the Treasury Department, and questions about financial oversight are best expressed to the Treasury Minister. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. PAC raised concerns about the Paris route affecting critical routes and the sustainability for the Blue Island. Would the Minister tell if he's been involved in supporting the Paris route, and what sustainability assessment was presented when the route was created for 2025?
Minister.
Sir, I must admit, we've got a very, very long way from the original question, sir.
Yes, that's right.
I can rephrase the question.
Yes, all right.
Because the sustainability of the Blue Island was questionable from 2024. When the new route, was the Minister part of the conversation for the introduction of discretionary new route when the financial sustainability of the company was questionable?
Honestly, sir, I don't entirely recall. At some point it was said to me that Blue Islands were happy to do a Paris-Charles de Gaulle route. From the top of my mind, I think there is some financial support provided, though very little. But I wasn't involved in any big conversations about it. It was, if I remember rightly, it was much more presented as a Blue Islands are happy to do this. And I said, oh, that's great. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you.
Final supplementary, Deputy Talia.
Yeah, so without the timeline, it's difficult to know whether we're talking about the same meetings, but our scrutiny panel has been given information that there was a meeting in June, it may not have been the 12th of June, at which a proposal was tabled for further discussion with Aurigny, with whom Blue Islands had identified substantial synergies through a merger to create a larger pan-island airline. And it was suggested that the Minister here dismissed that notion out of hand. Could the Minister confirm whether that was his recollection of that meeting and whether in fact that proposal was ever on the table, and if so, can he try and remember maybe what his reaction might have been to that suggestion?
Minister.
Sir, I don't recall a proposal from Blue Islands about merging with Aurigny. I don't recall that. They may well have said that there is the possibility that they can. So when I say I don't recall a proposal, I don't remember anyone sitting down and saying, this is how a merger with Aurigny would work, this is how it would operate. I think Blue Islands said that that is possible, that that could be done, but I don't remember anything in detail around how that would happen. So from that perspective...
So I wasn't asking about whether there was detail, I was asking whether it was proposed and what the reaction was.
And so from my perspective, I've only ever been concerned about the resilience, and so I can imagine that if that was put to me, I would have expressed concern about the possible resilience, given the lack of scale about a merged Aurigny Blue Islands situation. That to me is very likely to have been a reaction from me, because that's how I feel today, is Aurigny and Blue Islands merged would have been a very small airline suffering exactly the same issues around resilience that Blue Islands suffered.
Thank you. Question 3, Deputy Wilson will put to the same Minister. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir, and I'll try not to do this through chattering teeth. It's rather cold. Further to the announcement by Jersey Water that water charges will rise by 15.5% from January, will the Minister advise what analysis, if any, has been undertaken to understand the economic impact the increase may have?
Minister.
So no specific analysis of the impact of the increase in Jersey Water's charges has been made so far. However, the Cost of Living Group receives regular updates and analyses of the cost of living pressures faced by islanders. The next update will include an assessment of the impact of any price rises announced by utility companies serving Jersey, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Could the Minister give some indication of what kind of concern he has for those who will be affected by this increase? Some may be pushed into financial hardship. And if he has considered any mitigations to support this.
Minister.
Sir, we will discuss this in the Cost of Living Group. The price rises weren't, to my knowledge, specifically announced to me or other ministers in advance, so I don't think there has been any time to really assess that, sir, but other ministers may have had a different experience.
Thank you, Minister. Question 4, Deputy Stevenson will put to the Minister for Health and Social Services. Deputy Stevenson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister provide an update on the reintroduction of the home birth service and advise when this will be operational again?
Minister.
One of the Deputy would be kind enough to allow the Assistant Minister to answer that question, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. The home birth service, initially paused in November 2024, will remain suspended while the Jersey Maternity Unit undertakes a comprehensive and systemic review of its safety, governance and operational arrangements. This continued pause is a direct consequence of the Prevention of Future Death Order issued at the start of November following the inquest into the recent tragic home birth case in Manchester, where both mother and baby died. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm just taking that information in, and perhaps my question would change slightly. That could I ask the Assistant Minister to just explain that a little bit more, please? Is that a new review on top of the review that's just happened and concluded a number of months ago, and we seem to be in a bit of a limbo with where that service was going anyway? Is this something that is being carried out by trusts across the UK as a result of that? I'd just like a bit more information, please, sir.
Thank you, sir. This report was released on the 5th of November, so it's very recent, but because of the tragic death of the mother and the baby, it's now the coroner has decreed that this has to be a nationwide look at home births and the safety. So until all of the review is carried out by Jersey in relation to this, we cannot restart the service. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister would be prepared to put some timeline on that. I think the concern that members have, certainly that I have, is that we've been reviewing the home birth service for a very long time. There's been problems raised around one set of things to do with qualifications of nurses, then there was qualifications to do with ambulance staff, and I just feel like it would be helpful to know when the Minister thinks this will actually be resolved.
I very much regret, sir, that I cannot give a date because we have to carry, this is on top of the work that has been carried out. And this is really serious. And so we have to have a safe service. So I cannot give any date at all, I'm afraid to say. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. I think the question, I completely accept the need for safe service, but the language is different to that which is used to do with other things which the Health Minister is doing. The Health Minister is committed to assisted dying and has made absolutely sure that that is pushed through within a time frame that he is comfortable with. He's also committed to a partnership board and that's been determined to push that through. I wonder if the Minister would say whether there is exactly the same level of determination to reinstate a home birth service as there is to do with those other favoured activities.
Assistant Minister.
Thank you, sir. Any service that we provide, that is provided, has to be safe, and that is the only consideration that I'm able to give. It will be a clinically led decision, and I'm just a mere politician, so I cannot give a time frame. Thank you.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. The Assistant Minister suggested in an earlier answer that the decision to not restart the home birth service was taken as a result of a coroner's indication to all health services across the British Isles. Could the Assistant Minister outline to the Assembly whether every jurisdiction and area across the British Isles has taken the same action to withdraw a home birth service as a result of this coroner's report?
Assistant Minister.
I'm afraid I cannot answer, sir, for every jurisdiction in the UK, but I can answer for Jersey, and Jersey will be absolutely following what the coroner has recommended, and I can give the report that I've printed out this morning to the Deputy if she'd like to, and anybody else. Thank you, sir.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. It would be helpful if the Assistant Minister would share the report with members, I think, but also perhaps the advice that has been issued to health services across the British Isles proposing action as a result of that report.
I'm very happy to do that, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Sadia.
My question's been asked.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. And please could the Assistant Minister advise who is it, individual or body in Jersey, who ultimately determines whether a service is safe at the point of delivery?
Thank you, sir. I believe it is the Director of Midwifery and the Chief Nurse of the hospital that will be, and the Chief Officer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Supplementary, Deputy Dublé.
I thank the Assistant Minister for her response. And given the fact that there has been a lengthy ongoing review into the safety of this service, should Jersey not be further ahead in this process in terms of assuring that safety? And could the Minister look into this and come back to the Assembly with a date whereby that service will be reinstated, please?
Assistant Minister.
I very much regret, sir, that I cannot give a date. Thank you.
Deputy Stevenson, final supplementary.
Thank you, sir. Women in Jersey have now been denied access to home birth for over a year. This prolonged suspension does not align with the Nursing and Midwifery Council's published principles to support person-centred care for women and babies. And that guidance specifically outlines that women's views, choices and preferences are at the heart of maternity care and says that home birth options should be provided. Does the Minister consider the current situation to be good enough? And if not, what is the Minister and the team doing to prioritise the reintroduction of this important service?
Sir, I
Mr.
do
Minister.
think we have a really excellent maternity service. I agree that perhaps women at the moment are not given every choice, but my priority is safety for our mothers and our babies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Assistant Minister. Question 5, Deputy Jeune will put to the Minister for Housing. Deputy Jeune.
Thank you, sir. Further to oral question 14 in 2024 and written question 361 in 2025, will the Minister provide an update on any progress made in the development of a dedicated strategy to address the challenge of affordable housing for islanders under 25 years of age?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't recall in the specific questions the Deputy has highlighted reference to a dedicated strategy per se, but I would hope it can be taken as axiomatic that the broad agenda that I'm pursuing as Housing Minister has large elements of it which are specifically targeted at islanders under the age of 25. So the adoption of the residential tenancy law will have been a big step forward for young islanders looking to get independence and leave their family homes but into a rental sector which provides them with greater security and stability. The quantum of new homes provided by Andium will enable more young islanders to get on the housing ladder, and it is the case, sir, that islanders under the age of 25 have benefited from the first-time buyer schemes that Andium has led on. But, sir, on top of that, I'd like to say to the Deputy and to States members that in the next few weeks I am preparing to make an announcement on what will be the next steps in widening eligibility for social housing. I'm very much looking forward to do that, sir, and there will be things in there for the age group that the Deputy has referenced.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, and I thank the Minister for his answer. And I'm wondering if the Minister could advise whether his widening of the eligibility that will be announced in the next few weeks, if he is working, if he is consulting with different housing providers to ensure that this support for under 25s is not developed in isolation and it comes in a number of other elements as well.
Minister.
So that will, of course, be part of the package. So what I'll be announcing in a few weeks won't be the immediate turning on of new eligibility rules, but it'll be announcing the pathway towards getting that. And within that process, we will be able to build in whatever consultations that we need to do to make sure that it's not just a knee-jerk reaction, but that it's done at the right time and the right moment with all the right support in place.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so beyond the question of the widening of access, I wonder if the Minister does have in mind a strategy that would knit together various aspects of policy to address the issue that the Deputy Jeune has raised.
Minister.
So I believe I answered that in my first question. I think it's axiomatic that the entirety of the agenda that I'm promoting as Housing Minister has specific elements in it which are clearly applicable to young islanders, and I use that term rather than referring to a specific age group because lots of this will appeal to 26-year-olds as well, and it's a big part of the narrative that I've pursued in advocating for my agenda as Housing Minister, that one of the key aims ought to be to restore hope among young people that they can have a decent and prosperous future in Jersey without being held back by the housing difficulties that the housing crisis has posed to them until this point.
Supplementary?
Yes, so could the Minister then pick out one or two of the things that he is planning to do or has in mind as part of that comprehensive response?
So I believe I pointed out three of those in my opening question, sir. That was the thankful adoption of the residential tenancy law, and next its enactment. That will be key to providing younger islanders with confidence that the rental sector will be one in which they will have better odds than they've had under the old law. So providing more first-time buyer opportunities has been a part of that. I think that, well, I hope, sir, that in the near future we will be able to trial new first-time buyer products that aren't exactly like the ones we've had until this point, so that they might appeal to more people in more different sorts of situations. And, of course, the social housing eligibility that I referred to as well.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister share with me the pleasure that affordable homes, are now being delivered on sites in St Peter that his party voted against in the Bridging Island Plan?
Thank you, sir. If you're going to take a shot, at least aim properly, because my party voted in favour of the Bridging Island Plan, and we voted in support of Deputy Moore, as Senator Moore as she was at the time, when she brought amendments outside of the Island Plan process for those sites in St Peter. So I'm pleased to correct the record, sir.
Supplementary?
Without wanting to engage in a debate, I do believe that they voted against the green zone sites for affordable housing. But I'm grateful and pleased to hear that the Minister is encouraging greater supply in the market of affordable homes.
So when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. As a previous children minister, the previous term, and the current housing minister, would the minister advise what actions been taken to ensure there is a order transition from aid for the care leavers into the secure housing?
Minister.
Yes, sir. This is something I feel very strongly about. I was Children's Minister when some of the preparation work on corporate parenting legislation was done. It's something I'm very much personally committed to. So as it stands, we have what's called the partnership pathway within the housing gateway. That has basically different eligibility criteria in that people below the age of 25 can access that, and they access it with the support and referrals from other agencies, because it's a more involved process to help those people get into homes, rather than just giving someone a set of keys and then forgetting about them after that. So that's a key element of that.
But I'm sure that Minister, thank you for the Minister, and I'm sure that Minister is aware that we still don't have proper housing for the care leavers under 25. Would the Minister advise what work he has done with the Children Minister team, Children Minister himself and his team, to increase proper housing for the care leavers during his last 2 years?
Minister.
So I'm unsure what the Deputy means by proper housing. Could she elaborate on that?
Yes.
To have an adequate housing for the care leavers.
I'm still unsure what she means. So does she mean designated buildings, or does she mean a framework within all of our buildings that mean they could be appropriate?
I'm sure that Minister knows that not 100% of the care leavers are housed in their own flat after they left a minister's care, because of various conditions. Some of them are not ready to live independently, and some of them don't have available housing on the market to move in. My question, what work is on the way, and how much work was done between the children and housing to ensure that we are raising number of care leavers housing in their own flats and making sure that they can hold the tenants?
I attend corporate parenting board meetings, which are chaired by the Minister for Children. He chaired one of those meetings yesterday, and creating stable and loving homes is a frequent agenda item on those meetings. If the Deputy would like a further update on that, I'm more than happy to do so for her.
Final supplementary, Deputy Jern.
Thank you, sir. And it's welcome that the Minister has confirmed that he will announce a pathway to expand the eligibility for social housing for those below the current limit, which is 25 years of age. Can the Minister advise if Andiam has the right housing mix currently to provide homes for those young islanders, or would Andiam need to be building more to provide for young islanders, and this housing mix involves that young islanders?
Minister.
I kind of struggle with that question, sir, because Antium has an extremely extensive building programme as it currently stands. They're on site delivering between 700 and 800 homes at the moment, so that is just a general part of their agenda, that they're increasing the number and the mix of homes, and it's because of the opportunities that that provides that we're in the fortunate position of being able to consider widening social housing eligibility. So I think that's something that they're already doing.
Thank you, Minister. Question 6, Deputy Andrews will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Andrews.
Thank you, sir. Further to the adoption of P8 2024, will the Chief Minister advise the amount of expenditure savings made to date within the Cabinet Office?
Chief Minister.
Good morning, thank you, sir. To date, the Cabinet Office has saved almost £3.6 million in total. These savings have been achieved largely through reductions in staff, the external recruitment freeze, the decision not to backfill posts as staff left the department, sir, and a reduction in external consultants. On a like-for-like comparison, Cabinet Office has reduced by 32.6 full-time equivalent staff, sir, to a new total of 174, so that's a 16% reduction. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Yes, please, sir. Can the Chief Minister confirm whether there'll be future savings, and if so, will that be made in the forthcoming government budget? Thank you, sir.
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the future savings planned for the forthcoming budget, I believe, are 1.6 million, sir, and to date the department has a £1.3 million underspend.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Chief Minister advise that communication unit that was previously at the Cabinet Office was separated and the expenditure moved from the Cabinet Office into the department expenditures?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. The Communications Department is still listed as part of the Cabinet Office, although the department has reduced by 11 staff.
And can the Minister confirm if the 11 staff left the government or now they counted as the communication officers within the departments like Education, Health and others?
Yes, thank you, sir. The 7 that left were 11 that left, sir, were through redundancy. 7 voluntary and 4 compulsory. So that's a net reduction of 11, sir. They haven't been redistributed.
You've had your 2 questions.
No, my question was that from 11 people, are some of them now working as communication officers? And didn't get answer to my question.
So I apologies, I thought I did answer it. Of the 11 reductions, sir, were all redundancies, and they weren't redistributed. Thank you.
Deputy Andrews, final supplementary.
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Question 7, Deputy Jerm will put to the Minister for the Environment. Deputy Jerm.
Thank you, sir. Will the Minister advise what consideration, if any, took place during the development of the new animal welfare legislation in combining existing animal welfare laws?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And I'm happy, sir, to advise the Deputy that considerable consideration took place during the development of the draft animal welfare legislation to look at how the existing animal welfare laws could be combined. And as a result, some legislation is to be repealed and some to be saved by the proposed animal welfare law.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. And that's a welcome answer from the Minister. And could the Minister advise if that consolidation of the various animal-related laws would result in cost savings or efficiencies for enforcement, administration or public understanding in the future?
Minister.
Well, so I would hope that any consolidation would result in better understanding for the public, and I would like to think that it would also result in less work for officers. The whole idea of repealing laws, amalgamating them together, is to make life easier for both the public and for people who have to administer the laws themselves.
Thank you, Minister. Question 8, Deputy Wilson will put to the Chief Minister. Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Will the Chief Minister advise why the Assembly was not informed earlier of the risks to public funds in relation to the government's financial support of Blue Islands?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. As members heard this morning from Deputy a Millar statement, financial support was provided to Blue Islands to safeguard essential air links, especially, and I underline the word, especially for medical appointments, often life-saving medical appointments that islanders need to Southampton, and to protect the half-term holidays and other important parts of the tourism season, while the company explored longer-term solutions to its financial challenges. Making that financial support public at an earlier stage would have compromised the company's efforts to save the airline, enhancing an already difficult situation. So if the airline had failed without a plan in place for rapid transfer to another carrier, there would have been an extended period without service and a far greater disruption for passengers, especially those in need of medical treatment. The government supported Blue Islands for as long as possible until the extent of its financial position ultimately became clear. The Treasury and Resources Minister, Sir, and her team provided high-level confidential briefings to the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel in July and September, and we are grateful to them for respecting that confidentiality. Within 24 hours, Sir, of the decision not to continue to provide funding to Blue Island, States members were informed at a briefing at 2 p.m. on Saturday, the 15th of November. It would have been unacceptable to accept an option that disrupted our essential medical air links to Southampton. I just wanted to reinforce that point. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Chief Minister for his response. Question is really about how islanders can have confidence in the government's stewardship of the funds when significant risks were known internally but were kept from the Assembly until after the collapse. I wonder if he would like to answer how he can assure islanders that there is appropriate public stewardship.
Thank you, sir. I would like to reassure members and islanders that by taking the decisions we have taken in the course of the 12 months, we have saved taxpayers many, many millions of pounds moving forward, perhaps tens of millions of pounds. So I'm reminded of a headline not so long ago, just before COVID, Guernsey bails out Aurigny from the brink of liquidation. And since 2015, the states of Guernsey have had to subsidise Aurigny to the tune of somewhere approaching £75 million. They're an airline, sir, I understand, a 5-fleet aircraft airline the same size as Blue Island. Now, whilst we have invested money and loaned money to Blue Islands in the past, I believe we had to do that to keep them moving, sir. And the last thing we were going to do during a difficult tourism season was disrupt their service. So what we've done is we've carefully considered the situation. As the financial difficulties became worse, we took what we believe to be the relevant action. And I want to thank officials, Ports of Jersey, and also that have worked hard together to make sure a new service was stood up in a very short period of time, sir. Thank you.
Deputy Renouf.
So if I may test the limits of relevance in the question here, on the assumption that this is about consultation and about who was informed and who was not informed and when, would the Minister comment on the decision not to involve Guernsey in any of the discussions around this and ask whether he anticipated or whether anybody in the government anticipated that Guernsey, because they were not involved in discussions, might take retaliatory action in the form of designating routes to protect Aurigny's position?
This is about why the Assembly wasn't informed earlier, not about discussions with Guernsey.
So justifying it on the basis that it's about who was informed and who was not informed, and the question of whether Guernsey was informed or not is another branch of that.
This is about the Assembly not being informed, not about discussions with Guernsey, so I don't allow that question.
In which case, can I ask a different question?
Yes, you can ask a different question.
No, I'm not reframing it, a different question. The question around the Assembly being informed has focused on what's happened since June, but the questions I asked earlier of the Treasury Minister were about the knowledge of events before that and the seriousness of the situation once a company stops paying the airport and asks for its loans not to be repaid anymore. So why was the decision taken not to discuss that with the Assembly?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, I think, first of all, I'd like to refer the Deputy to the detail provided in the Treasury Minister's statements, and I refer to my original answer, sir. The government, often when it's dealing with highly sensitive and commercially sensitive issues, has to be mindful of how public that should be made, sir. And bringing a statement or an update to the Assembly in this public forum would have compromised the Blue Islands' ability to continue to trade. So what we did, what the Minister rightly did, was confidentially briefed her scrutiny panel. That's the way I think government operates, and as soon as we were in a position that we could share the information, as soon as the decision was made, we briefed members in under 24 hours on a Saturday, sir, because we were keen, very keen to ensure States members were properly briefed and understood the pathway we had to take to get to that position, sir.
Supplementary. Final supplementary, Deputy Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Given that we now know what's happened, would the Chief Minister commit to publishing the risk assessments and internal briefings that were prepared in relation to how the loans were organised and any analysis to suggest that the loan was unlikely to be recovered?
Chief Minister.
I'm not sure I can commit to that. There's a liquidation process underway, sir. There's an element of commercially confidential information. There are other airlines that this information could be useful to, sir, or not. So I can't make a commitment. Obviously, we'd like to be as transparent as possible, but we can only act in the realms of what is sensible and appropriate.
So could the Minister perhaps clarify what he is prepared to disclose?
I think so far we've disclosed about everything I think that is relevant to the decisions we have made. I don't think there'd be any problem in sharing any confidential information with scrutiny or perhaps members on a confidential basis, sir, but that's something we'll consider moving forward. I think we've given a clear and rational explanation of the actions that led to the decision made, and now, sir, we must step back and let the liquidators do what they have to do.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Question 9, Deputy Renouf will put to the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. Deputy Renouf.
Will the Minister advise what work, if any, has been undertaken in relation to the establishment and operation of the Micro Arts Development Unit as referenced in an arts strategy for Jersey 2022 to 27?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the Department created a Micro Arts Unit aligned with our arts and heritage strategies in 2023. At this time, sport was moved to a dedicated role, and the Arts, Culture and Heritage team was reorganised around strategic outcomes, empowered to manage partnerships and supported with targeted funding. This team builds ecosystem relationships, measures outcomes transparently, and leverages external resources to sustain our art and heritage strategies and maintain the Creative Island Partnership.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I noticed that when the review of the arts strategy was published in September, there was no mention of the Micro Arts Development Unit. So I'd just ask, why was that? Does it still exist? And indeed, is it still micro?
Maybe it's very small. Sorry.
So I am tempted to say if the Deputy looks at the very small print, but no, sir. I believe, and I understand it is more a question of definitions and, well, not definitions, but labelling, I think. So my understanding is that effectively that Micro Arts Unit does operate, and you see that through the small grants that are given. But I will check that there is still something we refer to as the Micro Arts Unit, because I'm not convinced we necessarily do, but I'll have to confirm.
Deputy Alex Curtis.
Thank you, sir. The art strategy, when it defines or suggests introducing a micro arts development unit, proposes that this unit will need to be no more than 2 to 3 posts. Could the Minister advise currently the staffing levels provided either through full-time employees or the total capacity of the micro arts development or the arts development unit?
Minister.
So similar to my previous question, I'd have to get back to the Deputy on that.
Supplementary?
Does he believe, though, that the scope of work falls within the original remit of 2 to 3 posts being sufficient to deliver the remit he wants from that function within government?
So, given the size of the arts team, full stop, the arts, culture and heritage team, full stop, I'd be surprised if one unit within that team had 2 to 3 posts, because I don't think the team is big enough for that to be the case. But I will have to get details about this, and I'll circulate them to all members quite happily.
Deputy
It's all right, sir. Thank you. Been answered.
Deputy Redo, final supplementary.
Yes, sir. I think the issue here might be around mission creep and the extension of the Arts Development Unit to do a job that arguably Art House Jersey was set up to do. So I wonder whether the Minister could comment on why he doesn't feel Art House Jersey is an appropriate body to disperse the funds that he's talked about, and whether this might not be an example of what the Chief Executive has talked about, where government expands into new spaces, sort of almost without realising it.
Minister.
Sir, no, and I believe I've discussed this before, so setting aside micro arts units or not, it has been my view that in arts and culture, particularly, sir, we have a number of organisations that we fund, and some of them disperse grants onwards, some of them don't. But one of the issues in arts is that you want as wide a range of arts to be seen and put on in Jersey as possible, and different organisations have different approaches and therefore exclude other types of art. The idea is that there would always be a small pot held in government so that different community arts, organisations that are seeking to do small things, Lullaby Choir is one that comes to mind, are able to access grants very easily, where it is just a case of showing an element of value for money, and the money is pushed through. The view of the art itself is not taken into account. And that way, we have been able to disperse significant numbers of low-value grants to a wide range of community organisations, and it is in no way a slight on any of the other organisations, including Art House Jersey, who I value enormously. It is just about saying we wanted a way to just provide money to community organisations without having a view on the quality or type of art that they are doing, but whether they are reaching a certain number of people within that community organisation. So that's all it is, sir.
Thank you, Minister. That brings that period of questions to an end. We now move on to questions to ministers without notice. And the first period of questions is the Minister for Children and Families. And the first question is from Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has been clear about his ambition to recruit more on-island foster carers, but could he advise whether he believes this fostering push is meeting its targets and delivering the results intended?
Minister.
I thank you for that question. Yes, I have, the ambition is to create more foster carers. We've had some successful campaigns, but I think I've actually spoken about this before in the Assembly, the conversion rate is actually low, and that's also reflected in campaigns that take place in the UK. I find that disappointing. However, for 2026, we have a new approach where in the UK, I'm trying to think of the name of it. However, it is where you have a number of foster carers who actually support each other. And we're hoping through that approach to encourage more foster carers. We've got campaigns starting, and I believe we've got one campaign actually that will target government employees. Thank you.
Supplementary.
Thank you, sir. As the Minister has highlighted, that conversion rate is low, meaning that at the moment, I believe, meaning that fostering is not being increased in Jersey. Does that mean that the Minister is falling back on greater reliance on residential homes rather than family-based fostering placements? And how, and if not, how does he intend to reverse this current trajectory?
Well, hopefully the trajectory can be reversed via the measures I've already spoken about. Inevitably, where there are fewer foster carers, we have to look at residential homes, which are, not perhaps they're not as good as a foster carer. However, we make every effort to make those homes as homely as possible. We are looking at the Loving Homes project, where we're increasing the number of homes. However, foster carers are the better option. And, I maintain my commitment to try and increase the number of foster carers in Jersey.
Deputy Catherine Curtis.
Thank you, sir. Following the publication of the online harms report, will the Minister explain what steps he has taken to address the findings and the recommendations of the review, or any steps that he is about to take?
Minister.
Thank you for that question. And yes, I have been taking immediate action. Of course, I've had to read the report myself, and I think I'm going to have to read it a second time because I think it's around 160 pages long. So, however, I've looked in particular at the recommendations that concern myself, and in that, I think the most important recommendation is that the Minister for Children and Families should coordinate work to assess the risks and impacts. So what have I done so far? I've had discussions with the officers at the Sustainable Economic Development Department as to their progress so far, and I'm pleased to see the work that they've done on the legislation, although I do probably see that as phase one of the legislation, and that we will have to look at further legislation in the future. I've spoken with the head of the NSPCC, who myself and the Assistant Minister have met with before, as they've got online safety campaigns, and perhaps we've suggested that we might have a joint campaign, particularly looking at online harms. I've made some initial inroads into looking at connections with the team in Westminster responsible for the online harms legislation and the impact so far. I did some research on VPNs and established that actually the VPN companies are very clever, because although the companies are trying to block them, they very quickly make changes to the servers and ways in which they're recognised so that they can be actively used again to circumvent the legislation. So that is the progress I've made so far. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, I thank the Minister for his answer and look forward to his response to the recommendations.
Thank you. Deputy Wall.
Thank you, sir. I've been told my questions actually should be directed towards the Education Minister, so I'll withdraw my question.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. Is the Minister satisfied that the communication between Children's Social Care Panel and the families that are caring for those children meets the statutory guidelines?
Minister.
I have no reason to believe that's not the case. If there is a specific instance where it's believed this isn't the case, then I'd be pleased to, if that can be relayed to me, then I'd be pleased to look into it. Thank you.
Supplementary?
Yes, how does the Minister take his duties, which are to ensure that he provides oversight and accountability to decision makers? If he could perhaps outline that and agree that he might meet with families who have concerns.
Minister.
I have no problem with meeting with families that are concerned, and I would make every effort to do so. I'm not sure in what area these, perhaps if we could elaborate on which decision makers that I should be communicating with.
I was referring to those that sit within his area of responsibility. Part of his role and duty is to ensure oversight and accountability.
Yes. Well.
Yes. Right. How do I ensure oversight and accountability? Well, of course, we have, various forums to do that. We have the Corporate Parenting Board, we have the various other boards that look at the children's plan. I meet in many cases, officers, and of course we do delegate this, officers meet regularly with people like the foster carers and various other bodies. So I think that I am doing that. If there is a specific instance, as I've said, I'm happy to look into that and meet with anybody who wishes to meet with.
Any more questions for this Minister? Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir, perhaps building a little bit on that one, what assessment would the Minister give about the current state of care for vulnerable children in the island, and what evidence would he give to support his view?
Minister.
Sorry, I missed part of that question.
What assessment would he give about the current state of care for vulnerable children in the island, and what evidence would he give to support his view?
Minister.
I think every effort is made to have the best possible outcomes for our children. There are many vulnerable children in our island. I think, unfortunately, the lack of housing and, in fact, foster carers means that there are some children that perhaps should be brought into the care that were unable to do so at the moment. And that is a situation that does worry me, and hence why in the budget we have asked for funding to rectify that. But I must say, where there are undue concerns, then we will immediately act in respect of vulnerable children.
Supplementary.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister could say whether he thinks the situation is improving or not.
Minister.
Yes, I would say that I do believe the situation is improving, and I think that the last inspection we had clearly said that there was progress in all areas. I think we're much more aware of the need for early intervention, and I am certainly happy with the progress that we've made in the last 2 years.
Deputy Moore.
Thank you, sir. What timeframe does the Minister believe that families should have when planning respite, their access to respite care for children with complex needs who require regular periods of respite?
I think this is an area I touched on actually in the recent scrutiny hearing, and it is an area where I believe we need to review the current arrangements. I do have concerns that respite is not always available, and I was quite frank with the scrutiny panel about my concerns, and I believe that this is an area where we need improvement.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you. I'm grateful to the Minister for his answer and would like to understand what his plan is for delivering that improvement.
Well, first of all, I think I need to be guided by a review of, we do intend to review that part of the service, and I will look to that review for guidance. Thank you.
Any more questions for this Minister? Deputy Gardner, then Deputy Jones. Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. I looked at the nomination speech for the Minister, and he said 2 new care homes have been operated during the last year to remove the need for emergency accommodation, but there are currently lack of planning. If elected as a Minister, I would immediately begin with work with the new Minister for Planning to rectify the planning issues related to the care homes. Would the Minister confirm if these 2 care homes stop working, and if any other new care homes for children on the island were opened during the last 2 years?
Thank you. Actually, neither of those 2 homes are actually in operation. they were both, in fact, one was, no, actually one of them is still in operation, but it has to be returned to the hospital as part of the hospital project, and the other is no longer in operation, as we didn't get the necessary planning permission for that. And although I considered an appeal, I decided in the end that it was probably not worth pursuing that appeal. We are opening new homes. We have one new home that's opening in the next week. That's down in the Georgetown area. We have another one in St Helier opening, and these are permanent homes. These are homes, unlike the others where we had short-term leases from the government. These will be permanent homes and a much more stable situation.
Supplementary?
Thank you. And in the same speech, the Minister said that we are securing our first therapeutic children home for Jersey. We know that this was held by the Minister within a month. Does the Minister consider that we still need therapeutic home for children in Jersey, or is they better served in the UK as it currently stands?
Not all therapeutics activity takes part in the UK. The reason that we did not continue with the therapeutic home was that on advice, it was considered that firstly we were unlikely to be able to recruit the necessary expertise, in that people in that field would not come to Jersey because of the small number of children involved. Also, there was the high cost of the home. In effect, there would have been 3 places with a cost, an initial cost, I believe, of over £3 million for that premises and the conversion. That's better served by offering a therapeutic package across all our homes, and we're absolutely necessary seeking expert therapeutic care in the UK.
Deputy Jones.
Thank you. The Minister said that the conversion rate was low for fostering families, and we've just heard his answer around the care homes. A few are opening, but we heard that there needs to be more. What is happening with children who are needing homes currently?
Got about 30 seconds, Minister.
Right. We have been quite open about the fact that there is in effect a crisis in the number of beds. We are managing that situation. Where absolutely necessary, and I say absolutely necessary because it is not something we wish to do, we will place a child in the UK, and I would hope that's on a temporary basis, where there is an absolute need to bring that child into care.
Brings your time to end.
Thank you.
Move on to the second period of questions without notice, and these are questions from the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. And the first question is from Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister advise whether Jersey is considering the introduction of T-level qualifications here, and if not, why not?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for her question. T-levels are an English qualification. They only exist in England. We're not looking at introducing T-levels here for a number of reasons. One is that there will be a challenge in providing a range of T-levels given the level of work experience associated with them and the limits in the number of industries here, to be quite frank. And also, to be quite frank, we're not included in that qualification here, so it is a challenge.
Supplementary?
Yes, so thank you, and thank the Minister for his answer. How does the Minister plan to ensure that vocational pathways for 16 to 19-year-olds remain relevant and high quality in the coming years as changes in the UK solidify and go towards these T-levels?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and that's a very good question. The work has already started. We recently, in Curriculum Council, had a report back from Highlands and Holier on exactly this issue. The main challenges that we face are what happens with BTECs in the long term. the implementation of things called V levels. I can really quite unexcitingly talk the Deputy through those if she wants to spend some time, and the future sort of range of qualifications that are available to us. But we are anticipating that, and we're doing the work early on. I do see there is both an opportunity and a challenge with post-16 qualifications into the future, but I'm sure that it's one that we can deal with because we do have the flexibility and freedom here to do what's best for our island.
Deputy Ayer.
Thank you, sir. What actions is the Minister taking to increase the number of male teachers in schools to give boys suitable role models? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's what a question. I don't think we have gender quotas in our schools, and I think that role models can be provided by male teachers across the school if that's what's needed. I certainly hope so that I provided exactly the type of role model that young men needed. I'm sure that's true. But I don't think gender targets are really applicable in those terms. So.
Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, sir. What is the percentage of male teachers in our schools compared to the 35% in English schools? And does the Minister believe that this can be raised in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have a lot of numbers in my head, sir. I do numbers well. I do not have that number in my head. I'm quite happy to find it for the Deputy. It's an interesting question, something I've never really thought about, but I will do. There is a higher percentage of female staff, particularly in primary schools. I think it's true in secondary schools as well. But so I think that we need to be very careful before we look at gender quotas in that way. Role models are role models, be it whoever they're provided by.
Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister advise when, if he does remember, he had meeting with the Jersey Early Years Association in 2025, himself, not the officers?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the Deputy for the question. There's a narrative being produced here in terms of the way in which we interact with the Jersey Early Years Association. I had 3 meetings with them. In this year, sir, there were up to June 21 meetings with officers. I tasked officers with very clear action to take to actually develop and, for the first time, deliver on 2 to 3 nursery hours. That is not, my door is always open to a meeting with organisations. If they want to come and speak to me, that's fine. But the negotiations are way more important. It's ironic, sir. No, it's not ironic. I would just make the point that I work across my officers and across other departments, which is certainly goes against the narrative of us silo working, because we do not. And so therefore, so the work of officers who are very qualified, very skilled and very experienced is equally as important, and they feed back to me on a regular basis. My door is always open to meetings as long as they are constructive and useful in the process.
Supplementary.
Thank you for the Minister for his long answer. If I understood correct, in 2025, Minister himself didn't meet the Jersey Early Years Association. Has the Minister and I do believe the officers doing a good job and officers there to represent the Minister. Would the Minister consider that after the industry didn't sign the proposed trade agreement after the end of October, the meeting with the Minister might be beneficial?
Thank you, sir. Again, we have this narrative creating which I completely do not agree with. So it wasn't about signing any agreement. It was about tasking officers to find out whether we could implement a NEF-style agreement across all of the nurseries. And not all of the nurseries were unhappy to do that. Some were absolutely on side. But we have to have consistency. So if we are going to actually deliver 2 to 3 year old hours, we have to work on that happening. So the options are to pay directly or for institutions to sign up. Childminders signed up or are happy to be involved in it and have said so publicly. Jersey Early, the JCCT are very supportive. The Children's Commission is very supportive. There's a list of places that are supportive. Quite happy to meet with representatives of the Jersey Early Years Association, but we have to get on with this and start to deliver this process. Thank you, sir.
Deputy War.
Thank you, sir. In December 2021, the independent review of inclusive education and early years was published. It made 50 recommendations. How many of these recommendations does he believe have now been implemented?
Minister.
Sorry, sir. I've got a bit of problem with my hearing today. Did you say, are you referring, is the deputy referring to the Nason review?
I am.
Thank you, sir. So yes, I gave a quite detailed answer, I believe, in scrutiny recently. There were a number, I can't give the precise number off the top of my head, for some reason I'm not good with numbers with the Nason review, but we instigated the Island Send review for the very reason that there were only a limited number of the Nason recommendations delivered, and that's true for the last, since the report was published. And there are a number of reasons for that. One of them is that they were very, very wide-ranging recommendations. And I believe that the SEND that we've been very open, I presented to this Assembly, gives us some focus on the delivery of those things. I would say, sir, that I would advise whoever's in this role in a couple of years' time to do exactly the same thing, to look at where we are and be very open about what's done and what hasn't been done. Because those priorities might change in a very, very, very quickly changing world, as the Deputy knows.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir. To carry on with the Minister's just said there, so in 2025 the Island Send review was published and came to a number of very similar conclusions. Why was the second report commissioned, given the Nason report suggested a 10-year implementation plan? How can any change plan be sustainably implemented if we keep commissioning new reports? Does this not undermine public confidence that genuine action is being taken?
Minister.
I think the Deputy answered his own question. Because of the number of reviews, we need to see where we are. We also had a changing world of SEND. And the world of SEND, if you start just have a 10-year period from a report 10 years ago, it will be out of date. It will not be relevant. So this is building on those reports and being open about what we're doing. And we do, sir, I absolutely recognise that, and so do schools, recognise that we need to address a growing situation. I don't want to use the word issue because that's not what it's about, a situation in schools of ever-changing need. I see nothing wrong with reviewing where we are at different stages. Indeed, sir, if you have a 10-year plan, you have to review it regularly. And that doesn't get rid of confidence. It does the opposite, particularly, sir, within the teaching profession and within school.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. There have been recent media reports of some changes made at Lasont School, and it looks like some very difficult decisions have had to be made in the respect of moving timetables around, so some children are learning online at home. Could the Minister please give some detail into why those changes have had to be made and what risk assessments have been carried out around the balance between having children in the school or at home, please?
Minister.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And yes, indeed, sir, it is a challenging situation, but it's a challenging situation that's being addressed. There is new leadership within the Passerelle. There has been a change in staffing. The thing I won't do, sir, is across the floor of this Assembly talk about detail and specific individuals or specific situations. I don't think that's fair on the school. If the Deputy would like to come and have a chat about the specifics or even meet staff there, I'm sure that can be arranged. I am confident that the challenging decisions that are made for a reason, and we hope to make sure that that is improved upon rapidly, and there is a really effective provision made for all of those students. Also, sir, I hope that as quickly as we can get the new Passerelle building online, so there's better facilities for those young people as well.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you, sir, and I thank the Minister for his answer. I would be interested to hear further details, and I do understand that the Minister can't give private information in the Assembly, absolutely. I think what I would like to understand in the broader sense in terms of resourcing for this school, is adequate resourcing being put in to the school? Does the Assembly need to consider increasing that? and in particular, if there are changes being made by children are learning online, what support would the Minister or the Assembly need to put in place for the children and the families to make sure that is happening without any detriment to the children, families or staff?
Thank you, sir. There's a couple of questions there. I might have forgotten the first one, but it might come back to me as I answer the last one. In terms of support online, I trust the school to be doing the job it needs to do. I trust the leadership and particularly the staff within the school to be giving as much support as they possibly can and to be dealing with the situation as best they can. In terms of resourcing, I've said a number of times, I've said it in scrutiny a number of times, that as Education Minister, I am duty-bound to say, of course, there's never enough money in education. We always want more, but then my other ministers will look at me and say, of course you'd say that. But so I think that we have to let and embed the changes that are happening in the leadership and the roles within the Passerelle and those schools, and all of our schools actually, over the coming months and years. And so I'm very cognizant of the challenges for all of our schools, particularly those children with additional needs and the costings that are there. And we are doing our utmost to ensure that those resources are available.
Deputy Renouf.
So the Minister's been unable to reach agreement on the rate to pay for extending nursery hours. Does he not accept that he needs to review the rate he's prepared to pay? And perhaps meeting personally with the Early Years Association might help to understand why they don't think they can deliver the service at the rate he thinks they can.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. I don't think it's that simple. And in fact, sir, I'm disappointed that we will be having a debate on a specific rate across the floor of this Assembly when there has been so much work that's gone on. The rate was calculated for 2 to 3 year olds with the assistance of the officer, a very experienced officer from economic development, so therefore independent of us, so that it can be done. It came up with a £10.24 per hour base cost, which includes Senko provision 20 hours per week, includes staffing to the standards set out in the regulations, plus other costs such as cleaning, heating, lighting, insurance, rent, etc. It also includes some costs, e.g. a bus driver and chef, which might not be applicable to all settings. The figures were agreed in early summer 2025 using estimates for 24 and 25. And I believe, sir, that those figures were correct. So the 10-24 hour was increased to £11 per hour for £15 a week. This is an additional 7.4%, and then will provide for sustainability and even some profit. Now, some people might say, what are we doing providing that profit for businesses? But I understand that sustainability is required, sir. So I think it is a fair rate. The average rate across our providers from the desktop research that we've done, and not all providers publish their rates, is £10.10 per hour. This is a rate for parents. This is a rate for parents and children to access 15 hours a week. I think it's reasonable. I think it can be applied. And so I think a number of nurseries actually were happy to go with that rate.
Supplementary?
Yes, so the Minister has floated the idea of paying parents in arrears rather than paying the nurseries. Is he confident that he has the processes in place to do that? Because it does look like it has the potential to be a bit of a mess.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I am confident we have the process in place to do that. Some of the language being used around our parents, sir, I'm a little disappointed with the narratives and comments papers that have been published that there may be substantive fraud, there may be a mess, they may not be able to apply. So I'd like to say to parents out there of 2 to 3 year olds, over 80% of whom 700 families who have places in nursery, I don't think you'll be doing that. I think you'll be able to engage in the system effectively in a simple way so that we can get payments back to you. It may be in arrears, but it's in arrears because of something called the public finance law. So I think
that brings your
payable.
time to an end. So thank you very much. The third and final period of questions without notice is to the Chief Minister, and the first question is from Deputy Brenner.
Thank you, sir. The matter of the complaints process was the subject of a report from Deputy Scott, which is yet to be published. In the CSSP hearing in July, I asked the Minister in connection with with this, with what would happen in terms of this report and actions from it. To be absolutely clear, there will either be a budget line for whatever is being proposed, or there will be a rescindment proposition relating to the previous proposition on an ombudsman. The Chief Minister replied, yes. What has happened to those two?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, there will not be a rescindment subject to the Council of Ministers approving the principle of proceeding with the Ombudsperson, which we plan to put on a forthcoming Council of Ministers' agenda. The Deputy will also notice an amendment asking for a budget line relating to protect the 394,000 we have in place to proceed with that work, sir.
Supplementary?
Well, yes, sir, but the Chief Minister said that he would ensure that it was in the budget. Why are we having to wait for an amendment? Why does an amendment have to be brought to ensure that?
Chief Minister.
Well, sir, it is in the budget. £394,000 is in the budget. I'll say that again, it is in the budget. Deputy Miles has asked for a separate line of expenditure. And I can confirm that £394,000 is in the budget, sir, and that is ring-fenced for the work to proceed on the Ombudsperson. Thank you.
Deputy Chairman.
Thank you, sir. During scrutiny's Common Strategic Priorities Review Panel hearing, the Assistant Chief Minister suggested that the Regulation Department may not currently be located in the most appropriate department. Could the Chief Minister confirm whether he believes regulation is presently situated in the right place, and if not, where he considers it would best sit?
Chief Minister.
So I was just clarifying which Assistant Chief Minister said that. We have had conversations about where regulation could sit. I've discussed that with the Environment Minister in the past. And I think it could possibly be relocated, but we haven't come to any firm decision. That's something we're unlikely to change prior to the end of this term, sir. But I think certainly aspects of where we place regulation, how we deal with it, members will not be surprised that I think we still are over-regulated in certain areas. You could argue that in some areas we're also under-regulated, so I think a piece of work needs to be done to make sure we get our priorities right.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, and maybe the Chief Minister could expand on his last point where he said a piece of work could be done. Does the Chief Minister then confirm that a more formal review would need to be done ahead of any decision regarding this, because to assess the most appropriate place for regulatory functions?
I wouldn't say we need a formal review. I think in the first instance it's a decision for the government to make itself how it allocates, where it allocates provisions such as regulation. Perhaps no decision could be made. A formal review might be something worth considering, but I'm all for avoiding lengthy reviews if possible and making well-informed decisions within the government.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. What is the Chief Minister's response to criticism by the courts on government processes in assessing data relating to Mr. Abramovich? What is the data retention policy of the government, and does he believe this criticism is valid?
Sir, the government will robustly defend its position in the court, sir, and further than that, I will not make any other statements as an ongoing legal process.
Yes. Supplementary?
No, sir.
Deputy Catherine Curtis. Oh, in that case, yes. Deputy Curtis, right, yes. Thank you,
sir. The online harms review demonstrated that children's rights and well-being are not properly embedded in policy making. This is not in line with the spirit of the Children's Convention rights law, nor recommendations from the Independent Jersey Care Inquiry. What is the Chief Minister doing to address this systemic failing?
Thank you, sir. The government welcomes a report from the Children, Education, Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel on digital harms, particularly those affecting children and young people. We recognise the importance of the review, ensuring Jersey's legislative, regulatory and policy frameworks are robust and responsive in line with best practice in safeguarding children and young people in the digital environment, sir. We are in the process of implementing the recommendations from the report, so we'll keep the panel updated.
Supplementary?
I thank the Chief Minister for his answer, but can just ask a general question around that. Does the Chief Minister believe then that children's rights should be subject to a formal assessment at an early stage of any policy making that affects them?
Chief Minister.
Well, so I'm looking across at the Minister, sir, and whilst on the surface it would think that's a good idea, I'd like to just sort of, I think we need to give that further consideration, but I certainly agree with the principle of that, sir, and I agree that we need to continue to move forward and make progress in the way we deal with these issues, sir, and that has been recognised by the Minister and the Government as a whole.
Deputy Dublé.
Thank you, sir. We were recently informed that the play strategy will be published before the end of the year. Could the Chief Minister please help the Assembly to understand how the actions within the play strategy will be funded and whether there will be a dedicated officer to bring forward those actions?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. I would need to refer back to that, sir, because I can't answer those questions off the top of my head, other than to say that fully support the development of the play strategy and further rollout of facilities and resources that support that. I'm not aware of an officer specifically to deal with that being appointed, but I can certainly find that out and come back to the Deputy, sir. Thank you.
Supplementary?
I thank the Chief Minister for his answer. And would he discuss specifically the question of a dedicated play officer with the strategy steering group and get their steer on it? And if they do believe that that is important, would he find a way to make that happen?
Whilst I can make no commitment, so we will certainly listen to them and review that, sir. But we are trying to reduce the number of headcounts there, not increase it, and I'm not sure we can prioritise that, but I do undertake to prioritise the play strategy and how that is developed.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, sir. Chance to ask the question that was ruled out of order earlier. The government did not involve Guernsey at any stage in the discussions regarding Blue Islands. Will the Chief Minister explain whether the government considered the potential for retaliation from Guernsey when they decided not to involve Guernsey, which seems to have now come in the form of designating routes as essential so they can protect Aurigny's position?
Chief Minister. We discuss how we work closely with Guernsey, and I've recently had a good conversation with Guernsey's Chief Minister and an exchange of correspondence where they have explained the position they're currently taking. We have agreed in principle to some roundtable talks about how we can work together to develop our air links. So one thing we do share, whilst we don't share every ideal with Guernsey, we don't agree on everything, we do share the desire that we have improved air and sea links between our islands, and we're going to work together to do that. So I think as part of our considerations when discussing the options of moving forward in relation to whether we continue to support Blue Islands, own Blue Islands, or work on a longer term transition with Logan Air, was the fact that if we went along those lines, so we would have to prioritise or designate some of our links as lifeline links, so required licensing to protect them from competition. So we're not at all surprised at Guernsey's move to do that, sir. And like I say at the beginning, we've undertaken to have constructive talks with Guernsey.
Supplementary?
Yes, so I take it that nobody did think about how Guernsey would react. One of the things that Guernsey stated when they designated the Jersey-Guernsey route was the importance of providing security of tenure for an operator of the route so that longer-term investment in the route can be considered. Would the Chief Minister agree that that suggests that they would be seeking to protect Aurini's position to make as much money as possible on that route for themselves? And if this is the case, and if the routes are to be protected for Aurigny, including the Southampton-Guernsey route, does that in any way affect the viability of Loganair's potential operations in the island?
Chief Minister.
I think the Deputy started off the question by suggesting that we didn't consider Guernsey. Yes, we did consider Guernsey's, how Guernsey might react, and there are no surprises. I think they are reacting in a way that we probably would have had to act had we become an owner of an airline. We have no intention, this government, and I hope this Assembly, should not have any ambition in becoming an airline owner. We've seen what happens when governments take over airlines, and we're far better as, and if I can refer, it's been mentioned, the CNAG report that was produced on transport links, and we focused on the KPIs. But I would draw members' attention that the CNAG has confirmed and praised the island's open skies policy, which have led to significantly enhanced air links. We have superb air links for an island of our size, sir, and that position works extremely well for us. I don't think Guernsey are acting to protect the profits of Aurigny, basically because there are no profits at Aurigny. There is just losses. And so, well, I didn't mean that to be humorous, sir, because we want Aurigny to succeed. They are an important partner, and we hope we can continue to work with them. What I think Guernsey do want is they want some protection on the routes, and they want to ensure there is some competition, but they also need to protect the viability of the lifeline routes for themselves. They don't enjoy the same level of air connectivity as we do, which is why they need to subsidise their own airline.
So a point of order. My question about the Loganair's viability if the routes are not available to them was not answered.
Yes, to respond to that question as well.
Thank you, sir. Well, the Deputy asked so many questions in his question. I do apologise for missing one, sir. We're not qualified to make judgments on how airlines will succeed or not. But what I do trust is I trust Loganair's ability from the successful conduct of their businesses and the great success they've shown as an airline. There's no debt, there's no profits, they are expanding, they're opening up all sorts of opportunities for the island. And when they come to us and say we can make a real go of this, and this is how we're going to do it, I trust them, sir. I don't think their whole business model relies on whether they can fly inter-island between Jersey and Guernsey or between Jersey and Southampton, sir. But I think there are opportunities for both islands if we embrace both Aurigny and Loganair, sir.
Any more questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Gardner.
Thank you, sir. The UK COVID inquiry second report was published on the 20th of November, and this concluded that despite clear signs that the virus was spreading globally, the four nations failed to take sufficient timely and effective actions. And decision that was taken has a lasting scars, increase in inequalities and long-term financial human cost, especially all vulnerable groups. What do the Chief Minister think? How did Jersey do? Better or worse?
Chief Minister.
I'm not familiar with the detail of that report. I, of course, refer back to the short report we did shortly after COVID, which gave us reasonably good marks. Of course, with hindsight, could we go back to those awful days? I remember being told, I remember exactly where I was standing, what I was doing when we were told we've got our first case. If we could go back there, we might have done things differently. But all things taken into account, sir, I think Jersey did a reasonably good job under the circumstances.
Thank you. And I'm sure the Chief Minister remembered there was several scrutiny and the CNAG reports that suggesting how Jersey can be prepared better if the next pandemic comes. Does Chief Minister remember? If not, we'll maybe follow up.
I'm very sorry, Deputy, we're running out of time. So
what has been...
I'm very sorry, we've run out of time for that. That brings that question for period of questions without notice to an end. We now move on to the second statement, the Minister for the Environment will make a statement regarding his response to the States of Jersey Complaints Board findings.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I stand to present two important documents to the Assembly today. The first is my ministerial response to the Complaints Board report R131/2025, and the second is the Regulation Directorate's statutory nuisance report on vibration and resonance. These matters have attracted considerable attention, and rightly so. They concern the interpretation and application of the Statutory Nuisances Jersey Law 1999 and the handling of a complaint that has caused significant distress to an islander. I want to start by acknowledging that distress. I am genuinely sorry for the suffering experienced by the complainant. While I consider that the Directorate acted within the legal framework, I accept that we could have handled this case better. We will learn from this and we will improve. Members will note that I have serious concerns about aspects of the Complaints Board's findings and its interpretation of the law. My position is clear. Decisions must be grounded in the statute. Article 5 of the law is unambiguous. The Minister must act when satisfied that a statutory nuisance exists. That requires credible evidence, not assumptions. To date, there has not been sufficient evidence that a statutory nuisance exists. I agree with the Board on a key point. That is, the law needs review. I have consistently advocated for a review of the Statutory Nuisances Law, and I welcome the recommendation to make this a priority. However, members are all too aware of the competing demands on the legislative pipeline. This has not been possible in the current term. I urge the next government to make the strategic priority, because islanders deserve a framework that is clear, modern, and fit for purpose. While I stand by the Department's legal position, I accept that our communication could have been clearer. Expectations were not managed as well as they should have been. We will address this. I have instructed officers to review and update our processes within the next 6 months, including publishing clear guidance on statutory nuisance investigations, improving the nuisance diary format, including questionnaire, ensuring transparency at every stage, and strengthening customer service training. These steps will help complainants understand what can and cannot be achieved under the law and ensure consistency in how cases are handled. I also agree with the Board's recommendation to offer the complainant a reassessment of this case, which has been outlined in the second report I tabled today. I believe with independent facilitation during the reassessment, we can restore confidence and engagement with the complainant. I have already reached out to the concerned islander with an offer to meet. Although I have concerns with the interpretation of the law by the Board, I have accepted all 4 recommendations. Finally, I want to address my non-attendance at the hearing. This was not out of disregard for the process or the complainant. It was a decision taken with great care and for one reason only. I have real concerns about the way hearings are conducted. However, I remain committed to constructive engagement. I am ready to meet with the panel at any time and await their invitation so that we can move forward collaboratively and focus on solutions. Members, these steps reflect my commitment to protecting public health, acting lawfully, and improving service delivery. I welcome your support in ensuring that islanders have confidence in our statutory nuisance framework. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. We now move to up to 15 minutes of questions on the statement. Deputy Chair.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise if additional staff or dedicated resources are being provided to deliver on the report's recommendations that he has now accepted, or will these fall on existing departmental budgets?
Minister.
So I don't believe we need additional resources or staff to change our attitude. I've agreed with the recommendations in the report. We are going to review the way we do things. We are going to improve. We are going to make it easier for people to understand the process. And that's really important because it's been such a challenge to get the people to understand the statutory nuisance law process and why evidence and things that happen don't reach that very high level of criminal prosecution. So I believe, just like we've done with the reform of the planning process, we can do it in-house, we can do it with the staff, and we don't need additional resources.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, thank you. Does this work include looking at the statutory nuisance law in itself to maybe review it and then do the necessary changes as he's outlined several times before in this Assembly?
Minister.
So I am committed to reviewing the statutory nuisance law, and I've said I will do that, and I will certainly recommend that the next government does it, because it's not going to be something I'm going to achieve in my time. But I would say to the Deputy, and I've got this written down so I can be quite clear, there is a gap in the provision for civil action for nuisance in the island, which limits options for islanders when a nuisance does not meet the statutory threshold. Improvements in the statutory nuisance law alone will not address this. I believe, and I've said this a number of times now, I believe that common law nuisance legislation must be developed to fill the gap. This is not a new concept for this Assembly, sir. It was debated in 2009 when the inadequacy of the voisinage legislation was highlighted. So there is work to do, but we do need civil legislation.
So I was just wondering if the Minister, my questioning was focused on resources, and my question was directly, is there resources for that work to be done on the nuisance, on the statutory nuisance law? I don't think that was answered.
My apologies, sir, I misunderstood the question from the Deputy. As I said, this will be a question for the next government. It will be a piece of review which will need to be done. Whether the resources will be in-house and capable of doing that within, I would imagine it would be a priority for the next Minister, and they would be able to do it in-house. Just a question of prioritising the time for law officers and for officers to work on it.
Deputy Balash.
So would the Minister accept that his refusal to attend the hearing of the complaints panel risked undermining the process of the panel and was a mistake?
Minister.
So I don't regard it as a mistake, but the law says that I'm not obliged to attend, I'm obliged to cooperate and provide evidence, and at every stage we have provided all the evidence that we needed to. It's just the physical attending at the hearing that concerned me, and I've outlined the concerns I have for the way the process happens, and I don't want to go over that particularly here now, but I do look forward to sitting down with the complaints board and discussing how we might move forward together.
Supplementary?
Yes, so would the Minister not accept that a refusal to attend a hearing of the panel would not have given an impression to the complainant that the Minister was willing to cooperate with its process?
Minister.
As I said, sir, I'm invited to attend hearings and I may submit a written response. I chose not to attend. It was a considered decision and shouldn't be interpreted by anyone as a refusal to engage. I submitted a full response, full written response, and that was submitted to the panel ahead of the hearing. I am genuinely sorry that the way this transpired, we ended up submitting a paper response to this particular complaint, and the complainant may have interpreted it in a particular way. but I can assure the Deputy that that was a coincidence and nothing specifically to do with this particular complaint.
Deputy Miles.
Thank you, sir. The first part of my question has just been asked by Deputy Balash, but given the Minister's answers about his views on the complaints panel, does this indicate that the Minister will support the introduction of a public services ombudsperson?
Minister.
I believe I would, sir.
Supplementary?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the answer.
I said I believe I would support.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Renouf.
Yes, so the Minister has put stress on the need to develop a civil remedy for these sorts of cases. Does he accept that relying too heavily on that would be problematic, in that those remedies tend to be available to people who can afford to pay to take private cases or civil cases through the courts, and that therefore a civil option is no substitute for strengthening and clarifying and improving the statutory nuisance law?
Minister. I take the Deputy's point on board, sir, and the cost of the average person, average Jerseyman, to taking anything to court is something we need to consider. We certainly did that with appeals 10 years ago, where we decided actually taking planning appeals was far too expensive, and we introduced a new system for that to happen far more cheaply. I think the main point, the most important point, will be around the civil nuisance legislation actually being enacted, because the difficulty in any complainant to reach the statutory nuisance threshold is a real challenge. You need so much evidence to get there that it's a real challenge. Even when it's accepted in many cases that a nuisance exists, it's not enough of a nuisance to reach that very high bar. So I think the most important thing is to get the civil legislation in place, and if it is a financial challenge for people to get to use that legislation, I think we should then at that point look at see how we can help people, the average person, the average Jerseyman, to access that law.
Supplementary. Deputy Howell.
Thank you, sir. This is sort of following on. I just wonder if the Minister may be able to say who's going to develop this civil law, and could he please also confirm that he is going to look into this statutory nuisance law, because I think previously he said the bar has been set too high. Thank you.
Minister. Certainly so. I'm committed to reviewing the statutory nuisance law, but in that commitment I can't say that myself or any future minister would be in a position to change the level of statutory nuisance required. But certainly the first part of the work would be to review the law, but I think you can't do one without the other, and I think it is absolutely necessary to start to develop this civil legislation, as I've said, and the Deputy asked a question about that. I would imagine it will be for officers and law drafters to go away and look at what civil legislation exists in the United Kingdom to start with, where they certainly do have this legislation, and to see what parts of that law could be suitable for here in Jersey to be incorporated into Jersey law.
Supplementary. Constable St Mary.
Thank you, sir. The Minister has referred several times to the high bar in establishing such a nuisance. Could I ask him to advise whether, in determining whether that bar has been reached, is that a decision for his own officers, or does he take the advice from the Attorney General or the Legal Officers Department coming to that decision?
Minister.
Sir, evidence on statutory nuisance, whether that bar has been reached, is brought to the Minister by officers who are qualified and trained for this specific purpose. And this is another difficulty in sometimes explaining to people who are genuine in the way they feel about a nuisance. They may well be able to appreciate a nuisance, but it's only an officer who's qualified to go on site and make that decision. The officer has to be qualified, and the officer comes away with the recommendation to the Minister that the level of statutory nuisance has been achieved.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Following on from that reply, for which I thank the Minister, is there merit in the states having independent officers to come to decision, which might take a lot of the heat out of such decisions?
Minister.
I don't know if there's merit or not, sir. Certainly I have a number of officers inside my department who are suitably qualified to undertake this work. And in difficult cases, sometimes we will ask other officers within the department who have not thus far been engaged with this particular complaint to reassess. And that's what I would expect we would do in the reassessment that we've offered in this case. Although in this particular case, with the reassessment goes also the offer of an independent person to oversee the way that the reassessment might be taken. But I can't see that particularly independent assessment by independent officers would gain us anything. They're all trained to the same level. It would be the same qualifications.
Any further questions for the Minister? Yes, Deputy Teddier.
Is the Minister able to comment on the use of civil litigation for nuisance as an alternative to meeting the high bar of statutory nuisance for those who feel aggrieved?
Minister.
I'm sorry the Deputy wasn't in the chamber a little bit earlier, sir, but I have committed it's the challenge of civil nuisance in Jersey is the legislation doesn't exist, and as I've said a number of times now, I think it's something that the next government should be pursuing at every opportunity.
Supplementary. Any further questions for the Minister? Thank you, Minister. We now move on to your next statement, namely in connection with the potential...
So I was just wondering, do you know if the Chief Minister in his role as Head of Government has a heater he can pass to everybody in the Assembly, sir?
I don't think so. Heater.
So I took the intuitive step of placing a small heater at my feet, so members are welcome to join me on the front bench.
I think there were only 2 heaters and he's half-inched one of them. Is that right? Oh, I don't know. I didn't know there was one over there. Yes, so Minister, do you want to make your statement in relation to the potential of offshore wind energy for Jersey?
Thank you, sir, and I rise today to provide the Assembly with an update on the offshore wind project. As members will know, work to assess the potential for offshore wind power to bring net benefit for Jersey was initiated by the previous government and supported by the Assembly in April 2024. When I became Minister, I was pleased to take it on as I share the ambition to examine all the options to diversify our economy, improve energy security and sovereignty, and contribute to the net zero transition. I think members are now familiar enough with my style to know that I have no wish to repeat the extensive details set out in the report I presented last week. Many members joined me last Thursday for an insightful discussion on the key findings and my proposed way forward. And for those detained elsewhere, I'm sure you have found the opportunity to read, or I hope you found the opportunity to read through the report in your own time. I did, however, want to share some of my key reflections at this point in the project. An offshore wind farm would be the largest and most ambitious infrastructure project undertaken within the bailiwick in modern history, with the potential to generate more electricity than the island could conceivably consume. A significant amount of power would need to be exported, and this could create an opportunity for us all. The costs of the developer would run into billions of pounds, and even though government will not invest, a project of this size will have an impact on us all and require government to have an active involvement. When I commended the proposition to the members in April 2024, I acknowledged that I did not have all the answers to their legitimate questions and concerns. Thorough investigations have uncovered a wealth of information and insights into the technical solutions, legal and regulatory necessities, the attractiveness of Jersey's wind assets to potential developers, the wider renewables industry, risk in global energy markets, and the intention of other Crown dependencies. Details are set out in the report and the numerous documents which support it, all of which are available on the government website. I've listened carefully to industry experts, the fishing industry, environmental groups and local businesses, and I'm very grateful for their time and effort applied, their thoughts and their ideas. I've also worked closely with the Offshore Wind Review Panel, who have had full, real-time access to the evidence and who have helpfully fed back at each stage in the evidence-gathering process. Feedback has also been gathered from international and local developers of all sizes who have combined experience of decades of offshore work. Whilst they're excited by the opportunity that Jersey presents, they've also been clear about the prerequisites to investment. I'm delighted that economic and technical assessments conclude that there may well be a case for Jersey to progress, but whilst there may be long-term benefits, there are also sizable costs and risks. Therefore, as I've stated throughout, it's vital that any decision must be made with a deep appreciation of the evidence and a factual understanding of the impact on Jersey of becoming an energy exporting jurisdiction. Throughout this process, this thorough process, what has become very clear is that we must secure an export market before we can assess with certainty the benefits an offshore wind farm could bring islanders. Understanding those benefits is essential before any decision to progress with the leasing of the seabed or the consenting of a wind farm in our waters. The conversations we have had over the last 2 years with both the UK and France have been positive about Jersey's potential opportunity. However, neither the UK or France have the capacity to progress to the detailed legal and technical steps that are needed to understand on what terms Jersey might be able to trade energy with them. Entering an energy market is not an insignificant step and is underpinned by specialist legal and technical skills. Both the importing and the exporting governments need to negotiate, manage and regulate market access with each other. Jersey would need to undertake a site leasing auction and then go on to consent and regulate a wind farm and oversee its operation and eventual decommissioning. Investments in these steps must only be made with clear milestones and a realistic chance of success. I am therefore prioritising the next phase conversations with counterparts in both the UK and France to gain a deeper understanding of the necessary steps to secure market access. These discussions must result in an acceptable net benefit for islanders before any decision to progress a project could be taken, and realistically, this will likely fall to the next government and the new Assembly. Like all members, I follow closely the ever-deepening geopolitical changes affecting our world with concern. It is evident that we find ourselves in different times to those when I last addressed the Assembly on this topic. Increasing international volatility, higher energy prices, trade restrictions on raw materials, domestic political uncertainty, delays in policy setting and a high cost of borrowing are all causing delays in the timelines for the development of some offshore renewables. Whilst I am confident this volatility will settle with time, in this context it is important that we reflect carefully on our approach. An offshore wind farm is a long-term project which may bring benefits to future generations. Whilst I'm determined to maintain the momentum and continue to make progress, the way forward I am recommending creates valuable time for the island and the next government to consider more deeply its options without compromising on delivery. I also regularly engage with my counterparts in other Crown dependencies, the UK and France, on a whole range of issues, including energy. From these conversations, I've come to realise that Jersey finds itself in a unique situation when it comes to exporting power generated by offshore wind. A single site situated in a busy stretch of ocean between two attractive export markets creates opportunities and challenges alike. It is absolutely critical that we work in close cooperation with our international neighbours and friends on a project of this scale, and equally important that we do not compete to be first, fastest, biggest or best, rather through reflecting on the evidence and focusing on maximising the benefit to our island. In the last phase of the project, over 1,000 islanders shared their thoughts on both the challenges and opportunities that offshore wind development in Jersey waters would bring. I often reflect deeply on the passionate insights captured through that public consultation. The variety of themes raised highlights the complexity and deep-reaching implications of offshore renewables for islanders. Consultations was the start of a conversation, and this report is by no means the end. Without the help and support of everyone involved, we could not have developed such a full understanding of the issues before us. Equally, as more information becomes available, it is vital that we keep the conversation going. In summary, I have learned that we have still much to consider, and acting in haste would be a cause of later regret. I am confident that the detailed and thoughtful work completed so far puts Jersey in a strong position to shape its energy future. This project is about looking ahead, ensuring that our decisions today create opportunities and not constraints for future generations. By directing our efforts to understanding market access in the short term, we can continue to capitalise on the opportunities whilst at the same time creating the time to reflect on when to firm up our options. When the scope of market access negotiations becomes clear, a business case for additional resources can be developed, subject to ministerial and Council of Ministers agreement. I remain committed to an open, evidence-based approach, and I look forward to continuing a constructive conversation with islanders and stakeholders as we build on this foundation together. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Now move to up to 15 minutes of questions in the first instance, and the first question is from Deputy Joan.
Thank you, sir. Can the Minister outline how the Government intends to continue progressing work to determine viable market access routes for offshore wind energy exports? What specific actions, engagements or milestones are planned with the UK and French authorities to move beyond exploratory discussions and towards formal agreements?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the decision's been taken that we won't spend any more additional funds on offshore wind as special items in any budgets. But in the future, we will concentrate on business as usual. And that means minister-to-minister discussions and officer-to-officer discussions. I have been to Whitehall with the Guernsey Chief Minister and the Isle of Man Chief Minister to speak to ministers from the UK government about this. I would hope that every opportunity would be afforded to continue those conversations. And we have a number of letters that have gone to the French government, and I would hope that in the near future they will respond saying that they wish to meet us also for minister-to-minister conversations about how we might export electricity into their jurisdiction. So I say to members that for the immediate short term, we will be concentrating on ministerial, political and officer discussions to see how we might develop. But until those get into any sort of detail, I'm not going to propose spending any additional funds on developing the fund.
Supplementary?
Yes, sir, and thank the Minister for his answer. And aside from the technical guidance that the external advisors gave the Minister, can the Minister advise what, if any, additional guidance was sought by these external expert advisors on how to navigate the process, including detailed market access support?
Minister.
So we've had some guidance on that, but I think the reason that we are pausing the project at this stage is to make sure that we do have access to the markets in principle before we discuss the access to the markets in detail. And I think it's really important that the next stage decisions are those are ministers, I said, minister-to-minister discussions, officer-to-officer discussions to get over the principle of being allowed to export power from this wind farm either into the UK or into France. And once the principal agreement is decided, we then get into the detail, which would be further work, and I imagine would need further funding.
Deputy Tadier.
Can the Minister tell the Assembly what level of formality the following discussions will have that he referred to, whether with the UK or French partners? Will these be conversations that are tangential to other discussions that are already going on, or will there be specific meetings held to look at the future of market access?
Minister.
I would hope, sir, that they would be specific discussions to talk about exporting power from offshore wind, and certainly the discussions I had in Whitehall with alongside ministers from Guernsey and the Isle of Man were specifically to do with exporting power from Crown dependencies into the UK grid. And I would very much hope that if I get a response, or if we get a response from Paris, that the minister-to-minister discussions would be specifically about wind power and how that energy might get into the French grid. Having said that, I would say, as a precursor to that, any opportunity for any minister in a discussion between Jersey, the UK, or Jersey, France, to drop into the conversation the fact that we want to talk about wind and how we might move forward together, I would like to think that ministers would always take that opportunity for an initial, very brief discussion, which would then inform a more specific and detailed discussion. I look at the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development. He and I have shared the leading of this wind project together, and I know he's a great supporter and promoter of our French connections, and I know, for example, that he would take every opportunity to speak to people. I might just add, sir, that certainly when it comes to regional support from France, both Brittany and Normandy have spoken very positively with us about wind. They have their own quite extensive plans to develop wind farms off both their shores, and we're very supportive of each other in that regard.
Parliamentary.
In terms of negotiating market access, if there were a condition from either party eventually that they would want to take 100% of any energy that was generated from a Jersey wind farm, has the Minister tested whether that would be politically acceptable for both this Assembly and for the public of Jersey, were that to be the case?
Minister.
I thank the Deputy for that specific question, sir, because certainly in the discussions we've had with the UK government, they were very clear that if we were in a position, or if they were in a position to take energy from our wind farm, one of their prerequisites would be that they would have access to all the power from that wind farm, and that they would not be in a position to allow us to take what we needed for local consumption. And I'm extremely aware, sir, that in the discussion we had back in this Assembly a couple of years ago when I promoted this scheme to the Assembly, that many members were very keen that part of the power produced from a wind farm would come directly to Jersey. That is proving to be more of a challenge than it might have been, and certainly I am absolutely aware that if, for example, we were to export our power to the UK and the UK wanted 100% of that power, I would need to be back in this Assembly explaining that to members, knowing that many of them only supported this wind farm moving forward on the basis that some of that power would be landed in Jersey for security purposes.
Deputy Renouf.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for his statement and for the report. The report does indeed, as the Minister has said, focus on difficulties in gaining market access. Can the Minister confirm that if discussions do accelerate, and to some extent there's a sort of a light switch element here, it's either off or it's on, if the light switch goes to on and we are in a position where we do have the potential to do those negotiations over market access, will the Minister confirm whether he would consider accelerating the process and, if necessary, returning to the Assembly to achieve this?
Minister.
I'm very happy to absolutely give that guarantee to the Deputy, sir. It was the Deputy, when he was Environment Minister, that first started promoting this work, and I was only too pleased to carry on from him. And he and I have stayed in close contact over this. I stress to members, we are just pausing this while we negotiate with both France and the UK about how we might export power. But if tomorrow morning a letter was to arrive on my desk from either one of those jurisdictions saying, yes, we're prepared to talk and we're very interested, we could absolutely put this project back on full steam ahead at a moment's notice. We've done a lot of work, a huge amount of work, and I hope members have had a chance to look at that. But if we could get into detailed and meaningful discussions with either of those governments in the short term, there's no reason why this pause would be nothing more than a few weeks or months.
Parliamentary.
Yes, sir. I wonder if the Minister is aware that while some offshore wind projects have had challenges, that France has just licensed a new wind farm even bigger than Jersey's proposed wind farm, in September, at a price of less than 6 pence a kilowatt hour, which is competitive with current import prices that we pay from France, and would you agree that it's therefore important that we keep in mind the continuing commercial opportunity, because otherwise we might miss out on that potential opportunity?
Minister.
Yes, sir, I do agree with that. As I said in my statement, when I was here 2 years ago promoting this wind farm, the world was in a very different place. And things have changed a lot in the 2 years, but equally they could well change back. And as the Deputy says, there are some successful wind farms moving ahead. Equally, there's been some challenging auctions in both France and the UK where bids have not been successful. So wherever you look, I think you'll find wind farms are progressing at speed, and other places wind farms are not progressing at all. But certainly it would be my view that as and when they come available, and certainly the technology in turbines and the cost of production, when the price of money reduces and the materials are available at competitive prices to build wind farms, I'm very confident that wind farms generally will be very much back on the agenda and being constructed all over the globe.
Thank you, sir. The report suggests offshore wind power could generate a potential return of £4 for every £1 investment invested. Can the Minister explain how robust this estimate is given current market volatility, and how does this projected return compare to other major economic initiatives or revenue-generating investments undertaken or considered by the Government of Jersey?
Minister.
Sir, I, like the Deputy, challenged this work to see how accurate it might be, and of course, while we are not in a position yet to know what terms would be demanded by any jurisdiction that we exported power to. We've done the work that was done within the economic department on this a £4 return for a £1 investment is very general. It would, of course, be predicated on any specific requirements, taxes or what have you, that might or might not be demanded by the jurisdiction receiving the power. But certainly that work was tested. It was sent away to, and I'm trying to think, somewhere in Scotland, I believe, to be retested to make sure that it was accurate. We're very confident that given a level playing field, and looking at the rules applied to other wind farms in jurisdictions around Europe, that a £4 return for a £1 investment is conservative but very achievable. Having said that, there's always one must always be mindful of the fact that until we negotiate the detailed discussions around access to other jurisdictions, that would the financial return would have to be taken into account, and it may vary. But this 4 for 1 was over the lifetime of the project, and some of that, a lot of that, much of that £1 money, if you like, invested up front would have to be invested at the very early stages before any return was achieved at all.
Supplementary?
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister advise to what extent the risk is that Jersey's lack of existing energy regulation could deter these high-quality developers and bring this project into fruition in the future?
Minister.
Regulations are a very interesting subject to start discussing, and of course, depending how and who the jurisdiction was that we might export to, it may well be that that jurisdiction would want a level of regulation over the wind farm if they are accepting the power and all the power from it. And at that point, there would need to be some very detailed negotiations. Certainly, having Jersey regulated in anything from an outside jurisdiction would be a challenge for us. I'm not saying that it's not something that doesn't happen at the moment. In certain areas of our legislation, there is a certain amount of regulation from outside. But certainly, one of the, either France or the UK asking for regulatory powers within Jersey's jurisdiction could be a challenge and would be one that we would need to talk very specifically about. But I think we would need to have our eyes open, and if either of those two places were taking 100% of the power, they would need some assurance that that power has been generated properly.
Deputy Howell.
Thank you, sir. I'm just seeking reassurance from the Minister that before we go ahead, that we would look at other forms of sustainable energy and our energy generally. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
So we're always looking at other forms of sustainable energy, and members will know there's obviously some debate about solar power on land in Jersey at the moment. Tidal is starting to come back as a subject of great interest. 10 years ago, I would have very much hoped that tidal power, sustainable tidal power, would have been advanced enough that we could be making use of it in Channel Island waters. That's not been the case thus far, but certainly in the last few months we've seen tidal power starting to come to the fore again. But I would say to the Deputy, this is very specifically a report about wind, about an offshore wind farm in an area of the seabed which has been agreed through this Assembly, of a size agreed through this Assembly, and this specific report is about creating wind offshore.
That brings the period of 15 minutes to a close. There are no further members wanting to... The adjournment's proposed. Members obviously know the boiler's broken. People are working on the boiler as we speak. We do only have those two heaters, apart from someone's got a private heater over there apparently. But we're stuck with those two heaters. They're not very effective, but the usher's been advised that any more may trip the system. That's why there aren't more than the two that we currently have. 2:15.